The wall was 40 centimeters too thick. Nobody was supposed to know that but her. Celeste Morgan is 26. A black restoration architect, sent alone to rebuild the penthouse of the Obsidian Tower. 3 orders. Silence. Deadline. No wall opened without permission. Her laser measure. Her sample case, a signed contract she was never meant to read. The storm cut the city dark. She dressed in the guest room, pressed on the red lipstick, and sent the selfie. Wrong number. 2 digits swapped. Kang Do-hyun is 29. They call him the Obsidian Dragon. Black ink climbs the right side of his neck, from below his ear into his collar. Crimson shirt. Platinum watch. He looked at the photo and recognized the room. His mother's lamp in the reflection. His reply was 3 words. Open the door. She checked with the front desk. She slid the spray back into her bag, and she opened it herself, by her own choice. 14 days on the clock. An inspection in 12. A council vote in 14. A wall that measured wrong, and a man who knew exactly why. But what she found behind that plaster was never on any blueprint. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Celeste Morgan had the words ready before Meredith even reached the front of the room. She had rehearsed them in the elevator, in the bathroom mirror, in the 6 seconds it took to walk from her desk to the glass conference room, where the whole firm was already seated. 3 months of drawings, 4 site surveys, a load analysis she had done twice, by hand, because the software kept rounding wrong. All of it lived in the folder now open on the wall screen, under a title that read, Heritage Row Adaptive Reuse. She waited for her name. Meredith Vale stood at the head of the table in a slate suit, gold-framed glasses catching the projector light, and tapped the clicker with 1 finger. This, she said, is what the firm can do when it commits. The slide advanced. Celeste's north elevation filled the screen. I want to walk you through the thinking, Meredith went on. The thinking here, and she said we. She said we made the decision to preserve the original masonry. She said we found a way to route the new mechanical without touching the facade. She said the client had called that morning to say it was the strongest package Vale & Rowe had produced in a decade. Celeste's pen stopped moving. Nobody looked at her. That was the part that landed. 12 people at the table, and every set of eyes stayed on the wall, on the drawings, on Meredith's finger tracing the line Celeste had drawn at 11 at night, with a laser measure balanced on her knee. The junior associate beside her wrote "we" in his notes. She set the pen down, quietly. The click of it against the table was the loudest thing she let herself do. Meredith reached the last slide and turned. Questions. A hand went up across the table. Who ran the structural? The team, Meredith said, without pause. It was a team effort start to finish. Celeste opened her mouth. Celeste supported the survey work, Meredith added, already looking past her. Wonderful eye for detail. Now, timeline. Supported. The word did more damage than silence would have. Celeste felt it settle in her chest, cold and specific, and she kept her face still because the junior associate had finally glanced her way and she would not give him a story to carry to lunch. She thought about the beam, the one on the 3rd floor of Heritage Row that the engineer had signed off on and she had not trusted. She had gone back at midnight, alone, with the laser measure, and found the deflection he'd missed, and she had rerouted the whole mechanical run around it in 2 days, so the client never knew there had been a problem at all. That was hers. Nobody at this table could have done it. She looked at the junior associate's notebook, at the word "we" in his careful hand, and she understood that the doing and the credit for the doing were 2 different objects, and that Meredith had spent 4 years teaching her the difference. The meeting broke 20 minutes later. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed about a lunch order. Celeste gathered her tablet and her notebook and the sample case she never went anywhere without, and she was 3 steps from the door when Meredith said her name. Celeste. A minute. The room emptied around them. Meredith perched on the edge of the table, glasses now pushed up into her hair, and gave the smile she used on clients who were about to be told the budget had changed. You're upset, Meredith said. I'm fine. You did good work on Heritage Row. Genuinely. Meredith folded her hands. But this is why I wanted to talk. The partnership review. I know we said spring. Celeste's grip tightened on the tablet. The other partners want to see you lead something. Solo. Start to finish. Your name on the certificate. Meredith tilted her head. They can't put your name forward off a project I presented. You understand how that looks. You presented it, Celeste said. I presented the firm's work. The two of them held there. Outside the glass, a phone rang and rang. So spring becomes what? Celeste said. It becomes when you've earned it clean. Meredith slid off the table and crossed to the door, and with her hand on the frame she turned back, and her voice softened into the register that Celeste had learned to distrust most. Which is why I'm giving you the Obsidian penthouse. The name meant nothing to Celeste yet. It would come to mean almost everything, but in that moment, it was only 2 syllables in a firm where every project had a code name, and she said, the what? Obsidian Holdings. The tower on Vesey. They want the top floor residence restored. Original 1930s penthouse, historic interior. The whole thing landmarked to the studs. Meredith's smile widened by a fraction. You. Alone. Lead of record. Celeste did not move toward the offer. She had worked for Meredith Vale for 4 years, and she had learned that a gift handed over this fast had a hook inside it. Why me? Because you're the best preservation mind in this office, and everyone here knows it except, apparently, you. Meredith let the door swing open. Come to my office at 2. There are conditions. The client is particular. Then she was gone, heels tapping down the corridor, leaving Celeste alone in the glass room, with her own north elevation still glowing on the wall behind her. She looked at it for a long moment. The masonry line, the 11 o'clock line. Then she turned the projector off. At her desk, she did not tell anyone. She opened her calendar, blocked 2 o'clock, and pulled up everything the public record held on Obsidian Holdings. It was not much. A holding company. A tower on Vesey Street, 41 stories, completed in the 20s and quietly acquired 8 years ago. A single glossy photo of a lobby with a black stone floor. No listed executives, no press. Raina texted at 12:40. Lunch? You sounded weird this morning. Celeste typed back, can't.new project, then deleted new project and wrote just busy, because if she typed the good part she would have to also type the bad part, and the bad part did not fit in a message. She ate a granola bar at her desk and read the landmark file on the tower twice. At 2, she knocked on Meredith's open door. The office smelled of the eucalyptus diffuser Meredith kept running. Meredith waved her in without looking up from a leather folder and gestured at the chair across the desk and let Celeste sit for a full 30 seconds before she spoke. 3 conditions, Meredith said. She held up one finger. Confidentiality. You sign an NDA today. You do not discuss the residence, the client, or anything you see inside it. Not with the office, not with your friends, not with the doorman. She looked up over the glasses. This one they mean. Fine. Second finger. The schedule. They want the assessment and the restoration plan inside 3 weeks. There's a preservation board vote at the end of it. The residence is up for a protected interior designation, and the client needs your report on the table before the board meets. 3 weeks for a full interior assessment. 3 weeks, Meredith did not soften it. That's the job. You said you wanted solo. Celeste said nothing. She had wanted solo. She had said it out loud, more than once, in rooms where she thought it might matter. There's a board vote, Celeste repeated, for a protected interior designation, so the client wants the residence landmarked. The client wants what the client wants. Meredith adjusted the folder squarely against the desk edge. Your job is the report. Condition of the interior. What's original? What can be saved? How you'd save it. Clean and defensible. The board reads it. The board votes, and your name is on the cover as lead of record. She let that sit. That cover is the whole point for you, so make it good. 3 weeks isn't enough for defensible. Then work fast. You're good at fast. Meredith almost smiled. The beam. Heritage Row. Don't look surprised. The engineer told me you caught something he missed and never made it his problem. That's exactly the instinct they're paying for. Celeste held very still, so Meredith had known, and said team anyway, that morning, in front of everyone. Third finger. Meredith held it up and left a pause around it, and this was the one. Celeste could feel it coming by the way the woman leaned in. You do not open a single wall without written authorization. From the client, in advance. Every probe, every panel, every square inch of original fabric, you ask first, in writing, and you wait for the answer. Meredith closed the folder. You do not improvise inside that residence. Are we clear? That's not how assessment works, Celeste said. You can't verify a 1930s structure without opening exploratory probes. If there's rot behind the plaster, if the anchors have failed, you ask, in writing, and if they say no, then you document that they said no and you protect yourself. Meredith slid a single sheet across the desk. Everything's in the agreement. Read it, sign it, and be at the tower Thursday morning. The client's representative will meet you in the lobby. Celeste picked up the sheet. It was a services contract, 2 pages, the firm's letterhead at the top, and a signature block at the bottom, already filled in on the client side. The name printed under the line stopped her for half a second, not because it meant anything to her yet, but because of how it was written, formal and complete, ink pressed hard enough to show through. Kang Seong-jae, Vice President, Obsidian Holdings. She read it. She read the confidentiality clause, which was longer than the rest of the contract combined. She read the schedule. She read the clause about openings and authorizations, which had clearly been written by someone who cared about that clause more than any other, because it was the only paragraph on the page in bold. Any questions? Meredith said. Celeste had a dozen. She asked one. Who signs off on the authorizations? Him? She tapped the printed name. His office. You'll get a contact Thursday. Meredith held out a pen. Congratulations, by the way. This is the one that does it. Deliver this, and the partnership is yours in the spring. For real this time. Celeste took the pen. She looked at the line where her own name would go, under a project that would finally, for once, carry only her name. She signed. Meredith took the sheet back before the ink dried and slid it into the leather folder, and Celeste noticed that she filed it separately from everything else, in the back, in a sleeve of its own. Thursday, Meredith said. Lobby, 8 sharp. Wear something the client will take seriously. Celeste stood. At the door she paused. The other partners, they actually asked for me to lead solo. They will, Meredith said, and went back to her screen. The correction was small. It moved the whole thing an inch to the left of true, and Celeste felt it, and she filed it away with everything else she had filed away that day, and she walked out. That night she told Raina exactly what the NDA allowed her to tell, which was almost nothing, and Raina, being Raina, heard the nothing and understood the something underneath it. They were on Raina's couch with takeout containers between them and Raina's camera bags stacked by the door for a shoot the next morning. She did it again, Raina said. Not a question. She said team. Team. Raina set her chopsticks down. You did that whole building. I heard you on the phone at midnight arguing with a structural engineer about a beam. It doesn't matter now. Celeste turned a container in her hands without eating from it. She gave me a solo lead. Big one. If I land it, it's the partnership. Raina studied her the way she studied a facade before she photographed it, looking for the crack under the good light. You don't look like a woman who just got the thing she wanted. There are 3 rules. Celeste held up fingers, the way Meredith had, and stopped herself and put her hand down. One of them's that I can't open a wall without permission, on a 100-year-old building. It's like being told to diagnose someone without touching them. So somebody doesn't want that building looked at too closely. Or somebody's just rich and paranoid. Rich and paranoid always has a reason. Raina picked her chopsticks back up. What's the client? I can't say. Can't or the NDA. The NDA. Raina let it go, the way good friends let things go, by circling back later. You know what bothers me, Raina said. Not the rule. Rich people love a rule. What bothers me is she gave it to you the same day she took Heritage Row off you, in front of the whole office, same afternoon. She said it was the one that gets me the partnership. Sure, or it's the one nobody sane wants, and she needed a name on it that she could blame if it goes wrong. Raina said it lightly, the way she said the true things, so they'd land soft. 3 weeks, no opening walls, a client with no name on the internet. Who takes that? Someone who's been told no for 4 years and wants to hear yes. Reina looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached over and squeezed her wrist once and let it go. Send me a picture when you're in. Not of anything secret. Just so I know you got there. I'll send you the ceiling. Send me the ceiling. Celeste went home and laid clothes out for Thursday before she went to sleep, and could not sleep, and lay in the dark running the third rule over and over. You do not open a single wall. She had spent her whole career learning to read what buildings hid behind their surfaces, the water that traveled where you couldn't see it, the load that had quietly shifted, the old repair someone had buried under fresh plaster hoping no one would ever look. Every skill she had was a skill for looking underneath, and they had hired her to lead a restoration on the condition that she not look underneath. She thought about Meredith filing that contract in its own sleeve at the back of the folder. She thought about the words supported. She got up once, near 2 in the morning, and pulled the landmark file back up on her laptop and read the one line that had stayed with her. Interior attributed to an uncredited hand. Original drawings not located. Uncredited, not located. For a residence this fine, that was almost impossible. Somebody had built a masterpiece at the top of a tower and made sure no name traveled with it. She closed the laptop and lay back down and thought about a client who paid a preservation architect to preserve a room and forbade her from learning the room's most basic secrets, and she could not make the two halves of it fit. At some point she slept. Thursday came clear and cold. She wore the blue teal silk blouse and the tailored trousers, the practical shoes, and she packed the tablet and the sample case and the laser measure into her bag, and she took the train downtown to Vesey Street and stood on the sidewalk looking up at 41 stories of limestone and dark glass with a black stone band around the base. The lobby floor was the floor from the photo, black stone, polished to a depth that made her hesitate before she stepped onto it. A security desk. 2 men in dark suits who watched her cross without pretending not to. At the desk, a third man, older, with a face that gave away nothing. Celeste Morgan, she said. Vale and Row. I'm expected. The man checked a tablet. He looked at her a beat longer than the name required. Then he lifted a phone, said 3 words in Korean she didn't catch, and set it down. Mr. Park will come for you, he said. She waited by the black stone wall with her bag on her shoulder. Above the desk, mounted flush, was a single carved emblem she took at first for decoration, a coiled shape, worked into the stone, that she couldn't quite resolve from where she stood. She stepped closer, tilting her head. Ms. Morgan! She turned. The man crossing the lobby toward her was tall, in a navy suit and a gray shirt, athletic and unhurried, and he offered his hand with a courtesy that felt rehearsed into permanence. Park Hyun-woo, head of security for the residence. I'll take you up. Thank you. The elevator is keyed, he said, leading her to a bank at the rear, past the 2 men who had watched her come in. You'll be issued a temporary credential today. It reaches 1 floor, the residence and nothing else. He fitted a black card to a reader, and the doors opened onto a car paneled in dark wood. You understand the terms of your engagement. I've read the agreement. Then you understand the third one. He stepped in after her and pressed a single unmarked button, and the doors closed on the black stone lobby and the car began to rise. It is the one that matters. Nothing opens without a signature, not a probe, not a panel. He looked at her, and his voice was not unkind, only exact. Whatever the building tells you it needs, you ask first. I heard you the first time. You'll hear it again. Everyone does. The floor numbers climbed. He watched them climb. It's easier for everyone if you treat the walls as though they were load-bearing, even where they aren't. That's a strange thing to say to a preservation architect, Celeste said. Whether a wall carries load is the first thing I'm hired to find out. I know what you're hired to find out. Hyun-woo kept his eyes on the numbers. I'm telling you the one place you're not to find it out. There's a difference between a building that's hiding damage and a building that's just private. A pause. This one is private. And if it's also hiding damage? Then you write down that you suspect it, and you ask, and you wait for a signature. He said it the way a man says a sentence he has said many times. You'll find the residence is not used to being told what it needs. Celeste watched the numbers too. 38, 39, 40. The car slowed at 41 and settled with a softness that spoke of a great deal of money spent on the machinery. One more thing. Hyunwoo said, as the doors began to part. You may see things inside the residence that don't concern your work. Personal effects, photographs, rooms that are closed. He turned to face her fully. The closed rooms are closed. If a door is shut when you arrive, it stays shut. Understood. The doors opened. She had expected grandeur, and there was grandeur, but that was not what stopped her on the threshold. What stopped her was the light. The residence ran the whole crown of the tower, and the morning came in through tall, bronze-framed windows, and fell across a floor of herringbone wood gone golden with age. And the plaster ceilings above her carried a relief work so fine, so deliberate, that she forgot for a moment that she was standing in a job. Miss Morgan, Hyunwoo said behind her, your credential. She took the black card without looking at it. She had already tipped her head back to read the ceiling, the way she read every ceiling, and what she saw made her breath change. Not decoration bought by the yard but designed, every panel resolving into the next, the hand of a single mind visible in all of it. Who designed this? She said. Hyunwoo was quiet a moment. That's one of the things, he said. That doesn't concern your work. She lowered her eyes to him. You have the residence until the board vote, he said. 3 weeks. The scanning equipment you requested is in the front room. If you need access to anything, you send the request to the address on your card, and you wait. He stepped back toward the elevator. Someone is always in the building. If you need to leave, use the call button. Don't try the stairwell. It alarms. You're leaving me alone up here. You're never alone up here, he said, and the doors closed on him, and the number above them began to fall. Celeste stood in the enormous quiet of the residence, at the top of a tower she was not allowed to open, holding a card that reached 1 floor, under a ceiling designed by someone whose name no one would give her. She walked the length of the front room slowly, hands behind her back, the way she'd been taught to move through a building she wasn't yet allowed to touch. Look before you reach. The paneling was quarter-sawn oak, original, the joints so tight a century later that she could barely find them with her eye. The window bronze had never been replaced. Along the north wall a low bookshelf ran built-in and empty, and above it, worked into the plaster frieze, she found the coiled shape again, the emblem from the lobby, smaller here, folded into the pattern where a careless eye would read it as ornament. A serpent, she thought. Then, closer, no. Something with a jaw and a spine of ridges. She filed it and moved on. A hallway opened off the far corner. 4 doors. 3 stood open onto rooms full of morning light. The 4th was shut. She stopped in front of it, hand halfway up, and remembered Hyunwoo's voice in the elevator. The closed rooms are closed. She lowered her hand. She stepped back, but she noted the door. Solid, older than the others. A brass plate where a handle should be, and no handle at all. And she filed that too, in the place where she kept the things a building didn't want her to know. She set her bag down on the golden floor. She took out her tablet and her laser measure and the sample case, and she looked around the great front room at all the surfaces she had been forbidden to disturb, the plaster, the paneling, the deep window reveals, and she felt the old pull start up in her, the one that had gotten her every good thing and every hard thing in her career, the need to know what was underneath. She lifted the tablet and photographed the ceiling. For Reina, for the promise. She typed "got here" and attached the photo, and stood with her thumb over send. Then she looked past the tablet at the far wall of the room, where the paneling ran unbroken from corner to corner, and something in the proportion of it caught at the edge of her trained eye and would not let go. She lowered the phone without sending. The wall was too far from the window. She didn't know yet how she knew. She would spend the next hours with the laser measure proving what her eye had told her in one glance. But standing there in the golden light, alone and not alone, forbidden and hired, she felt the room shift its weight around a fact she could not yet name. She raised the laser measure toward the far wall and thumbed it on, and the small red point of it landed on the paneling and waited for her to read what the building had been trying to hide. The red point held on the paneling, and the number that came back made Celeste lower the tool and lift it again to be sure. She stepped to the window wall. She ranged it a second time, from the glass to the far surface, and wrote the figure on her tablet. Then she crossed the room, put her palm flat against the back wall, and pushed. Nothing gave. It felt like stone through plaster. It should not have felt like stone. She pulled up the archive drawings on the tablet and laid the digital plan over the room with 2 fingers. The far wall in the drawing sat 40 centimeters closer to the window than the wall her hand was touching. 40. Not a rounding error, not settlement, not a draftsman's tired afternoon. Someone had built a wall in front of a wall. She stood there and let the traina hang at her side and did the thing she always did when a building lied to her. She got quiet. She listened for what the lie was protecting. Her phone buzzed in her bag, a text from Reina. Pics or you didn't survive the Mafia elevator. Celeste almost smiled. She did not answer yet. Instead, she walked the length of the false wall, tapping every 18 inches with 2 knuckles, ear turned toward the plaster. Solid, 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 then a change. A shift in pitch, low and hollow, the sound a closed drawer makes. She marked the spot with a strip of blue tape, tapped again on either side. The hollow ran nearly a meter wide before the tone went dead again. She photographed the tape. She photographed the seam where the crown molding met the ceiling, because the molding on this wall was newer than the molding on the other 3, and she was the only person in the world paid to notice that. She crouched at the baseboard and ran a fingernail along the paint line where the wall met the floor. Under the newer coat, a ridge, a joint that shouldn't be there. She scraped a flake loose with her thumbnail and rubbed it between her fingers. 2 layers of paint over plaster over something that answered like poured concrete. Buildings from the 1930s did not pour concrete inside their own drawing rooms. Someone had, and recently enough that the second coat still smelled faintly of solvent when she leaned close. She sat back on her heels and looked at the whole wall the way she'd learned to look at a patient before touching it. Not for what it showed, for what it was working to keep flat and calm. A wall that had swallowed a meter of a room and grown newer molding to smile about it. "What are you hiding?" she said to it, under her breath. And the wall, being a wall, kept its face. She thought about the 3 rules Meredith had laid on her at 2 o'clock. Secrecy, the deadline. Never open a wall without written leave. Standing here with a concrete flake drying on her thumb, she understood the 3rd rule differently than she had that afternoon. You did not forbid a preservation architect from opening walls to protect the plaster. You forbade her because you already knew what was inside one. Somebody in this family had written that clause, knowing exactly which wall she'd find. The realization sat cold in her chest. She had been hired to certify a room and steered, in the same breath, away from the 1 square meter of it that mattered. She logged the tap line, the concrete flake, the fresh molding, the 40-centimeter overlay, 4 photographs, 1 voice memo. Then she stood, because her knees had gone stiff, and because the light had changed while she worked. It was later than it should have been. It was the kind of later that sneaks up on a person who has stopped noticing time. The elevator chimed down the hall. She turned. Hyun-woo came in without hurry, hands loose, eyes going to the blue tape before they went to her. "You marked the wall," he said. "I measured the wall. You were told not to open anything. I didn't open anything. Tape isn't a probe." She held up the tablet, the overlay glowing, the 2 walls stacked 40 centimeters apart. "Your drawings and your building disagree. I flagged it. That's the job." He looked at the screen a long moment. Something moved behind his face and got put away. "Send me nothing about this," he said. "Not tonight. It goes in the assessment. The assessment is why I'm here. Tomorrow," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." He glanced at the window, where the light had gone the color of a bruise. "There's a storm coming off the harbor. Bridges are already slow. You should have left an hour ago." She checked the time and felt the afternoon collapse under her. She had lost 3 hours to a wall. Outside, the sky over the water had turned the flat metal gray that meant the city was about to be shut in. "I'll pack up," she said. "You won't make it home before it breaks." He said it plainly, the way he said everything. "There's a car, but the west side's already flooding at the underpasses. Ms. Vale's office knows the client keeps guest rooms on this floor for staff who get caught. Your staff, for 2 more weeks. Take one. I don't stay at job sites. You stay where the client houses you." A flicker of something like apology. "It's in your agreement. Read the housing clause." He moved toward the hall and stopped at the 4th door, the closed one, the one with the brass plate and no handle. He set his back to it, as if standing guard over it were a habit older than her visit. "The 2 open rooms at the end are made up. Take either, not this one. I wasn't going to touch that one. People say that. He almost smiled and didn't finish it. Rain's here. I'll be downstairs. The elevator's locked to your floor. Don't use the stair. She heard the elevator take him down. Then she heard the rain arrive all at once. A wall of it flung against 41 stories of glass, and the room went dark enough that the lamps clicked themselves on. The guest room at the end smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Celeste set her sample case on the bench and stood dripping the day off her shoulders. She had 2 dry things in her bag from a shoot Raina had dragged her to and never used. A copper silk dress folded small, an ivory cardigan she kept for client dinners. Her petrol blue blouse was soaked to the skin from the 10 steps between the car and the awning that morning, and it had never fully dried under the office air. She changed because she was cold, not because anyone would see her. That was what she told herself, and it was mostly true. The mirror over the dresser was the kind you only find in rooms that were built before mirrors got cheap. Real silvered glass, a little swimmy at the edges, framed in carved wood gone soft with age. Above it hung a lamp she had been half noticing since she walked in. A single fixture, hand-blown glass the color of amber. A dragon worked into the metal collar where the shade met the arm. Not the building's dragon, a gentler one. A woman's hand had drawn this one. She would have bet the promotion on it, if she still had a promotion coming. She sat at the dresser to pin her hair off her neck and caught her own face in the swimmy glass. Tired, 26 going on 40. She thought of the meeting, of the team, of Meredith saying her name to no one. She opened the small zip pouch she carried everywhere and took out the one thing in it that was entirely hers. A tube of red lipstick. Her mother's shade, or near enough. She had worn it to her first client pitch and to her grandmother's funeral, and to the day she signed for her own apartment. It was the color she put on when she needed to remember she was a person and not a line item. She leaned into the glass and drew it on, slow, the arc of her top lip first, the way her mother had taught her, and when it was done she looked less like someone's supported survey work and more like herself. She looked, for the first time all day, like a woman who had caught a hidden wall with her bare hand. She held her own gaze in the swimmy glass a moment longer than she meant to. 12 years she had spent learning to see what buildings hid, and not once had anyone in a boardroom said her name out loud when it counted. Meredith had built a wall in front of her too, she thought. A smooth new coat over solid work, fresh molding on the seam, the whole thing painted to look like it had always been the firm's. She rubbed her lips together to set the color. The building and the woman ran the same trick. She had spent all day being the only one in the room who could tell. The phone was on the dresser. Raina's text still sat there. Pics or you didn't survive. Celeste tilted the phone, framed herself in it. The red mouth, the copper silk, the amber lamp glowing over her shoulder, the swimmy old mirror catching all of it. It was a good photo. It was a photo that said, "I'm still here, I'm still me, they didn't get the whole of me today." She typed under it, "Survived, barely. Trapped in a tower by a storm and a suspicious wall. Tell you everything Monday." She hit send on Raina's thread. At least she meant to. Her thumb had been scrolling, the way thumbs do, and the thread that sat open when the keyboard closed was not Raina's. It was a number she'd been texted from that morning, the building's contact, the one Hyunwoo's office had used to send her the access code. The last 2 digits she had never once looked at closely. She had copied the wrong one open. The message went where the picture went, and the picture went to a number 1 digit swap off from the front desk, and neither of those was Raina. She didn't know that yet. She set the phone down. She sat with her red mouth in the old mirror and listened to the rain and, for 1 clean minute, felt fine. 40 floors up and 1 wall over. On the far side of the door with the brass plate and no handle, a phone lit in the dark. Kang Do-hyun had not meant to be in the building tonight. He had come to sign 3 things and leave, and the storm had closed the bridges, and so he was where he almost never let himself be, in the private wing of the penthouse, in the room he kept locked, sitting in his mother's chair because tonight the city had trapped him with her ghost. The phone was his private line. 4 people had the number. None of them sent photographs. He looked at the screen and did not move for a long time. He knew the room. He had spent the worst year of his childhood in that room, and the best hours of it too, on the floor by that dresser while his mother drew buildings on the backs of envelopes. He knew the mirror, the swim of it at the corners, the way it made everything look like it was underwater and a little kinder for it. He knew the lamp. He had watched his mother solder the dragon into the collar herself, the one soft dragon in a house full of hard ones, because she said a house needed one thing in it that wasn't afraid. He did not know the woman. He had learned young to read a room in a single frame, where the exits were, who was armed, who was lying, what a face wanted before its owner admitted wanting it. It was the first skill his uncle drilled into him, and the only one he had never managed to put down. So he read the photograph the way he read everything, fast and against his will. Brown skin lit gold by the amber shade, a red mouth, eyes that were looking at herself the way you look when you've forgotten anyone might be watching. Behind her, unmistakable, his mother's lamp, his mother's mirror, his mother's room, which was 2 doors from the room he was sitting in, on a floor no one was allowed to sleep on, behind a wall his uncle had ordered sealed 9 years ago and told him to forget. The message under the photo said, "Survived. Barely, trapped in a tower by a storm and a suspicious wall." A suspicious wall. He read it 3 times. He set the phone face down on his mother's dresser, and then he turned it back over, because setting it down had not made the woman go away. Someone was in his mother's room. Someone had found a suspicious wall. Someone with a laser measure and a red mouth was sitting 8 meters from the thing his family had killed conversations over, and she had sent him a picture of it by accident, wearing a face that had no idea what it had walked into. His first instinct was the one they had built into him since he was 9. Contain it. Remove her. Call Hyun-woo. Have the woman gone by morning. Have the room sealed behind a second wall. Bury the mistake under another mistake, the way his uncle taught him. His thumb hovered over Hyun-woo's name. 1 tap and the machine would wake. The machine that had cleaned up his father's messes and his uncle's and, twice, his own. By dawn there would be no architect, no photograph, no record that a woman had ever stood in that light. He had done it before to people who deserved it and to 2 who hadn't, and the second kind still visited him on nights like this one, which was part of why he was sitting alone behind a locked door in a storm instead of downstairs among the living. He looked at the photo again, not at the room this time, at her. She was smiling at herself in the mirror, not for anyone, not for a camera she thought was aimed at anyone who mattered, just a woman who had been ground down by a long day and had put on red lipstick in a strange room to remember she was still a person. He knew that smile. He had watched his mother wear it in that exact glass, the private repair a person does when no one is supposed to see. He did not call Hyun-woo. He typed 3 words. He looked at them. He deleted them. He typed them again. Open the door. He hit send before the part of him that ran the family could stop the part of him that had once sat on that floor. The phone buzzed against the dresser, and Celeste picked it up expecting Raina's usual chaos. A heart, a threat, a demand for more pictures. Open the door. She read it, and her stomach dropped a half inch. She checked the sender. Not Raina. A number she didn't have saved, the digits close enough to the front desks that her eye slid over them and then snagged. She scrolled up. Her photo. Her red mouth, her whole self, sent to a stranger. Heat climbed her neck. She stood so fast the bench scraped. She crossed to the door and put her hand flat on it and felt, absurdly, for a lock that was already thrown. The phone buzzed again. Not the stranger. Raina, on the right thread this time, replying to nothing. You alive? Celeste typed to the wrong number instead, fingers unsteady. Wrong number. Delete that. The 3 dots came back at once. I know this room. Her hand stopped over the screen. I know the lamp, my mother made it. You are in a room no one sleeps in. Who let you in? She did not answer. She went to the door of the guest room, eased it open, and looked down the dark hall, the 3 open rooms, the 4th door with the brass plate and no handle, at the far end, closed as it had been all day. Rain against the glass, the lamps making little pools of amber down the corridor. She typed, I'm the preservation architect. I'm here on a signed contract. Who is this? A pause, then, the person who owns the room you're standing in and the wall you're suspicious of. Come to the end of the hall, the door with the brass plate. I'll open it from my side. Every rule she'd been given that day lined up in her head like witnesses. Sigil. Deadline. Never open a wall, Never open a door. Stay where the client houses you, not one step past it. She thought about the way Hyun-woo had put his back to that fourth door, guarding it like a family plot. She thought, I don't know who this is. She thought, it could be anyone. It could be exactly the kind of trouble every warning about this client had been circling all day. So she did what her mother taught her, which was not to be brave and not to be afraid, but to be certain. She picked up the room phone on the nightstand, the hard line, and pressed the single button marked front desk. It rang twice, Hyun-woo's voice, careful. Ms. Morgan. Someone's texting me from a private number. He says he owns this floor. He's telling me to come to the fourth door. She kept her voice flat, the way she kept it in every meeting where a man tried to make her feel small. Is there a person behind that door? Or do I call the police and describe a stalker? A silence on the line that lasted one beat too long. There's a person, Hyun-woo said finally, and something in him had gone very still. Give me the number. She read it to him. The pause after was the longest yet. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Not louder, lower, the voice of a man recalculating a night he thought he understood. That's the owner, he said. Kang Do-hyun. Mr. Kang's nephew is the vice president who signed your contract. Mr. Kang is, he stopped. He's the principal. He does not text people. I've worked for him 6 years. He has never once texted a contractor. Is it safe? It's safe. A breath. Ms. Morgan. Whatever's behind you being there tonight, I didn't arrange it. Neither did you. Do what you're comfortable with. No one will touch you either way. That's not how this house works, whatever you've read. She hung up and stood with her hand still on the receiver. Kang Do-hyun. She turned the name over. The nephew was the vice president on her contract. Kang Song-jae. The signature Meredith had filed away in its own separate sleeve at the bottom of the folder. The gesture she hadn't understood at the time, and understood a little better now. So the man who signed was not the man who owned. The man who owned did not sign things and did not text contractors and had, tonight, texted her. Somewhere under the fear, a cooler part of her was already filing it. The owner was hidden even from his own paperwork. Someone had arranged for the principal's name to appear nowhere. That was not shyness, that was architecture. She stood in the middle of the borrowed room with her heart going and her red mouth in the swimmy glass and the amber lamp glowing that a dead woman had made with her own hands. She could stay in this room. She could lock it, wait out the storm, leave at dawn, write the assessment, flag the wall in an email, and never once walk down that hall. That was the safe thing. That was the thing that kept the promotion alive, and the NDA clean, and her name off whatever this family buried behind false walls. She looked at her phone, she looked at the door. She took the small canister of pepper spray out of the front pocket of her bag, weighed it in her palm, and, after a moment that decided a great deal more than she knew, set it back down on the dresser. Not because she trusted him, because she had spent a whole day being handled by people who decided things about her without asking, and she was not going to walk down that hall as a person things were happening to. If she went as the one who chose it. She picked up her tablet, because whoever this was, she was still the architect, and the wall was still a lie, and a lie was easier to face with the drawings in your hand. She opened the guest room door. She walked the length of the dark corridor, past the 3 open rooms, past the pools of amber light, the rain throwing itself against the glass on her left the whole way. Her heels were quiet on the herringbone. The dragon in the frieze watched her from the shadows above the doors, and for the first time she looked straight up at it and understood it had always been watching, long before she came. Halfway down she stopped, once, at the mouth of the second open room, where the amber light didn't quite reach. Her breath had gone shallow and she made it slow down. She listed the facts, because facts were the railing she held when a situation had no railing. She had told the front desk exactly where she was going. Hyun-woo knew the name and the number. There was a hard line and a locked elevator and a canister she'd left behind on purpose. If this went wrong, there would be a record of it, and she had learned this week what people did when there was no record. She kept walking. She reached the 4th door. Brass plate. No handle on her side. She raised her hand and held it there, an inch from the wood. From the other side came the sound of a bolt drawn back, slow, deliberate. A man giving her every second she needed to change her mind. She did not change her mind. She flattened her palm against the door and pushed it inward, and she opened it herself, by her own hand, into the amber light beyond. And there, framed in the doorway of a room full of his mother's ghosts, in a crimson shirt cut to the shoulders of a man who had spent his whole life being feared, stood the person the building had been trying to hide. He looked at her red mouth. He looked at the tablet in her hand with the two walls stacked 40 centimeters apart glowing on the screen. Something in his face that had been closed for 9 years came loose. "You measured the wall," Kang Do-hyun said quietly. "I measure everything," her voice held. "It's the job." He stepped back from the door, not toward her, away, making room, the one gesture in his whole vocabulary he almost never got to make. "Then come in," he said, "and I'll show you what my family built it to hide." Behind her, down the hall, the elevator was already climbing. Celeste stepped over the threshold, and the elevator down the hall stopped climbing. The doors opened onto Hyun-woo, one hand still on the panel, the other flat against his own chest as if he'd run the last 3 floors on foot. He saw her inside the 4th room. He saw Do-hyun standing near the window in the crimson shirt. His jaw worked once, and he said nothing, because there was nothing left to guard. "Close it," Do-hyun said, not to her, to Hyun-woo. The doors slid shut. The 3 of them stood in a room that had been sealed to the world for 9 years, and now held all of them at once. Celeste kept the tablet against her ribs. She'd promised herself, in the dark of the corridor, that she would treat this like a sight walk. Sights didn't care whether you were afraid. Sights answered questions if you asked them in order. So she asked one. "What's behind the back wall?" Do-hyun didn't answer with words. He crossed to a low chest under the window, opened the top drawer, and lifted out a folder. Not thick, older than the room's silence. He set it on the chest and turned it to face her. "Read the signature first," he said. She came closer. She had to. The paper was a service contract, and the format was one she knew in her sleep, because she'd signed its twin 4 days earlier in Meredith's office. Same clauses, same 3 orders, and at the bottom, in a hand that pressed too hard on the downstrokes, the same name that lived in the separate sleeve at the back of Meredith's file. Kang Sung-jae, Vice President, Obsidian Holdings. "This is the client contract," Celeste said. "For the restoration." "That is the contract my uncle signed 9 years ago," Do-hyun said. "For the men who built the wall you measured tonight." She read it again. The date, the scope, worded as concrete remediation. The same restriction she'd been handed by Meredith, printed here almost verbatim. No interior surface to be opened without prior written authorization from the client. She felt the floor of the thing shift under her. "He used the same language," she said. "He wrote the language," Do-hyun's voice stayed low. "Both times." Celeste set her tablet on the chest beside the folder and woke the screen. The 2 floor plans sat stacked where she'd left them, the 40 centimeters glowing between them like a held breath. She turned it so he could see. She didn't explain. She'd stopped explaining things to men who already knew. Do-hyun looked at the overlay for a long moment. His hand rose toward the screen and stopped short of it, the way people stop short of a wound that isn't theirs. "You did that in 1 afternoon," he said. "I did that in 20 minutes, she said. "The rest of the afternoon I spent proving I wasn't wrong." Hyun-woo shifted by the door. "She knocked the panel," he said. "There's tape on it now. Blue tape, front room." Do-hyun's eyes came up off the tablet and found hers. Something in them had changed register, not softer, sharper. A man who had run this building on the certainty that no one looked too closely was standing in front of the one person hired precisely to look. "Show me," he said. They went back down the corridor, all 3, and this time no one told her which doors to ignore. She led. That was the first thing she noticed and refused to celebrate. She was walking in front. In the front room, the storm still pressed the glass. Her blue tape ran in a rough rectangle across the lower third of the back wall, marking the hollow she'd found. She'd left the sample case open, the laser measure on the floor where she'd knelt. Do-hyun stopped a meter from the wall. He didn't touch it. He looked at the ceiling molding above the tape, then at the molding along the 3 other walls, and she watched him see what she'd seen. That one length of it was younger than the rest by decades. 9 years, he said, half to himself. Longer for the concrete, Celeste said. The pores cured hard, the paint on top of it is 2 coats, and the second coat is newer than the first by a lot. She crouched, tapped the baseboard where she'd scraped her sliver. Somebody opened this once after it was sealed. Recently. Then closed it again badly. Both men went still, in the particular way that means a sentence has landed somewhere it wasn't supposed to reach. Say that again, Do-hyun said. She stood. This wall was sealed 9 years ago. That part I'll believe from the contract. She pointed at the lower edge, where the paint film puckered against the floor. But this seam has been broken since. Cut and refilled. The refill's clumsy. Whoever did it the second time didn't have 9 years and didn't have your money. They were in a hurry. Hyun-woo moved to the wall before he caught himself, then stopped with his hand raised, waiting on his boss. You logged the building, Do-hyun said to him. It wasn't a question. Every entry to this floor, 6 years of it. Every one, Hyun-woo said. Nobody comes up here without me. Then somebody came up without you. Do-hyun's gaze hadn't left the wall. Before you, or around you. The security chief's throat moved. Celeste watched a loyal man do the arithmetic of his own failure and not like the sum. There's a service riser, Hyun-woo said slowly, behind the pantry. It's welded off at this floor, has been since I started. Check the weld, Do-hyun said. Celeste picked her flashlight out of the case and handed it across before Hyun-woo could ask. He took it, looked at her once. A recalibration, she thought, the look a man gives a tool he'd assumed was decorative, and went. That left the two of them in front of the wall. You understand what you're telling me, Do-hyun said. I'm telling you what the wall's telling me, she said. I don't know what's inside it. I know 2 different people closed it, years apart, and the second one was frightened. How do you know frightened? Careful people take the molding off in one piece and put it back. She nodded at the ragged upper line of tape. Frightened people cut through it and hope no one looks up. And which are you? He said. Careful. She held his eyes. I take the whole piece off. I put it back so the next person can't tell I was there. That's the difference between an architect and a thief, Mr. Kang. We both open walls. One of us signs the record. He absorbed that. She could see him weighing her the way he'd weighed the overlay, looking for the seam where she might be lying and not finding one. He turned from the wall to her, and for the first time the distance between them was a choice he was making, not a fact of the room. Most people I hire look at the floor plan and the deadline. You look at the fear. It's the same skill, she said. Buildings lie the way people lie. They add a layer over the thing they don't want found, and they hope the new paint sells it. She heard her own voice catch on the second half of the sentence and let it. I had a wall like this done to me on Monday. Somebody put a fresh coat over my work and signed the front of it with the word team. She hadn't meant to say it. It came out because the 2 shapes had finally lined up in her chest. The beam she'd caught at midnight and lost to Meredith's mouth, and this wall with someone else's fear cured into it. She shut her mouth against the rest. Do-hyun didn't fill the silence with comfort. That, she would think later, was the first thing about him she trusted. He just looked at her, as if she'd handed him a second contract to read. Down the hall, metal scraped. Hyun-woo's voice came back flat. Weld's been cut, ground down and painted over. Recent. Do-hyun closed his eyes for exactly 1 breath. When he opened them, the owner was back in the room, and the man had stepped behind him. Here's what happens now, he said. You stay in the building until the bridge is open. You don't send that overlay to anyone. You don't send a single photograph of this wall to a single person. I'll put men on this floor. 2 of my people at your side whenever you're up here. Protection. The word landed, and Celeste felt her spine set. No, she said. Hyun-woo, coming back into the room, actually stopped walking. No, she said again, evenly. Not protection. Do-hyun's head tilted a fraction. Men who own 41 floors do not hear that word often, and she watched him decide, in real time, whether to be offended. You found a hollow wall and a cut weld in my father's tower at midnight, he said. You'll take the men. If you put 2 of your people at my shoulder every hour, one of 2 things is true when the council meets. She lifted a finger. Either I'm your employee, in which case my assessment isn't independent and it isn't worth the paper, and your landmark interior loses its protection on a technicality your uncle would love. A second finger. Or I'm your hostage, And the first inspector who reads the room the way I read it will smell it. You don't want a guarded architect. You want a clean one. Silence. The storm filled it. She's right about the council, Hyunwoo said quietly, and Celeste saw Do-hyun register the small mutiny of his own man agreeing with her. Then what do you propose? Do-hyun said. Cold, but asking. The power in the room had slid a few inches, and everyone in it felt the floor tilt. Celeste picked her tablet up off the chest. She'd carried it back in without noticing, and turned it face down, deliberately, so the wall was no longer the thing between them. Money talk needed a clear table. A professional agreement, she said, not protection. Scope. I'm already contracted to assess and stabilize this interior before the Preservation Council votes on the protected interior designation. That contract's real. Your uncle signed it. She let that sit a beat. I'll do exactly that job, openly. I'll document what's behind this wall as structure, because that's what it is until proven otherwise. And structure is inside my scope whether or not your family wants it opened. The contract says no wall opens without written authorization from the client, Do-hyun said. Then the client authorizes it in writing. She met his eyes. You, not your uncle. The name did something to his face, a muscle at the jaw. He was, she understood suddenly, not the man who'd signed. He'd been kept off his own paper, the way she'd been kept off her own beam. 14 days, Celeste said. That's what I have before the council votes. I'll give you a full assessment and a stabilization plan inside that window. In exchange, I open this wall, properly, molding off in one piece, logged, photographed for the record and no one else. And whatever's in it goes into my report as a preservation finding. Not your secret, not my leverage, a finding. And if the finding damages my family, then your family built something into a landmark that a landmark inspection was always going to find. She didn't soften it. Your uncle bought 14 days of my silence by hiring my firm. He didn't buy 14 days of a blind woman. I'm not going to be the fresh coat of paint on your wall, Mr. Kang. I did that job for somebody else this week and I'm done doing it. The room held. Hyunwoo had gone entirely still, the flashlight dark in his hand. Do-hyun crossed to the window. Below, the city ran with rain, the west side gone dark in patches where the water had taken the grid. He watched it the way she imagined he watched most things, as territory. There's a second clock, he said, without turning. You should know it before you agree to anything. I know the council votes in 14 days. 12 days from now, the city sends a structural inspector. Now he turned, not for the landmark, for the tower. There's a filing my uncle made, a safety review of the upper floors. He requested it, signed for it. In 12 days, a city engineer walks this floor with a scanner, not unlike yours, and he opens whatever reads wrong. Celeste felt the two dates click together in her chest, like the two floor plans on her screen. 12 for the inspection, she said slowly. 14 for the vote. Your uncle set the inspection, Hyunwoo said. And it wasn't a question either, and the temperature of his voice had dropped. 2 days before the council would give this room a protection he can't buy his way past, Do-hyun said. An inspection he controls, that finds whatever he needs found, in a wall he sealed himself. He looked at Celeste. He isn't racing you to hide it. He's racing you to reveal it first, on his terms, with his engineer. His story. The overlay on the dark tablet, the cut weld, the frightened second seam, it all rotated in her head and came to rest on a single, colder shape. Someone had opened this wall recently, in a hurry, afraid, and someone had also, calmly, filed the paperwork that would open it officially in 12 days. They're not the same person, she said. Do-hyun went still. What? Whoever cut this seam was frightened and fast. She nodded at the tape. Whoever filed a 12-day inspection 2 weeks out is patient and covered. Fear and patience don't live in the same hands. You've got 2 people in this wall. Not one. For the length of 3 heartbeats, no one spoke. Then Do-hyun did something she hadn't seen him do. He looked at Hyunwoo, and it was the look of a man discovering he'd been counting his enemies short. 2, he said. At least, Celeste said. Hyunwoo set the flashlight down on the chest, very carefully, as if it might go off. I need to pull the entry logs, all of them, tonight. Do it, Do-hyun said. And the riser welds on every floor, not just this one. He turned back to Celeste and the owner's mask was gone. What stood there was a man doing arithmetic with the same knot in his stomach she'd carried up the corridor. You have your agreement. 14 days. Openly. I authorize the opening in writing. Tomorrow. My name, not his. In writing? She repeated. And I keep my independence on paper. When the council meets, I sit as the assessor of record, not as your guest. You'll sit as whatever keeps your findings clean. He said it like a concession, and she took it like one. Then we have a scope, Celeste said, and put her hand out. Because that was how you closed a professional agreement. And because she wanted the record of the room to show that she had offered it, not received it. Do-hyun looked at her hand. Down the hall, the storm rattled a loose pane. Then he took it, and his grip was careful, in a way that told her he was used to breaking things by accident and had learned not to. 12 days, he said, releasing her. Then 14. Don't miss either. I don't miss deadlines, she said. I miss sleep. Deadlines I keep. Something moved at the corner of his mouth that in a lesser night might have been the start of a smile. He didn't let it finish. Neither did she. Ha-hyun-woo was already at the door. I'll wake the log team. And I'll have the guest room made up properly. The bridges won't clear before dawn. He paused. Then, to Celeste, in a different voice than the one he'd used all day, the one that had told her a closed door stayed closed. The lamp in there, don't unplug it. The switch is temperamental. She wired it herself. She. The word again, the same one that lived in the amber lamp and the silver mirror and the uncredited hand in the landmark file. Celeste filed it and said nothing, because she'd learned tonight that some questions you ask a wall, and some you wait for the wall to answer. The elevator took Hyun-woo down. That left the two of them again, and now the agreement sat between them where the fear had been, and it changed the air. You should sleep, Do-hyun said. I should look at the seam once more with better light, she said, while the tape's fresh and I remember what my hands felt. He didn't argue. He crossed the room and, without asking, angled the amber lamp so its light fell across the lower wall. He'd been in this room enough to know exactly how the light moved in it. She noticed and didn't remark on it. She crouched at the baseboard again. Under the warmer light, the second seam showed even clearer, a hairline that wandered where a careful cut would have run straight, refilled with a compound that had shrunk as it dried. Whoever did this had maybe an hour, she said, and no proper tools. This is a knife and a tube of caulk and a bad conscience. When? Do-hyun said. The compounds held its shrink. 6 months, maybe less. She looked up at him. Somebody was in this sealed room within the last 6 months, opened your father's wall, took an hour, and closed it scared. And your uncle filed a city inspection 2 weeks ago. Those two facts are related, and I can't yet tell you how. He crouched beside her, the first time he'd come down to her level, and the room felt smaller for it. He studied the seam the way she'd taught him to in the space of an evening, and she watched him not touch it. My father sealed this room the year he died, Do-hyun said. Quiet. I was 20. My uncle told me it was structural, a remediation. I believed him because grieving men believe the person who hands them the paperwork. His eyes moved along the wall. You measured it in 20 minutes. I had a laser and no grief, she said. That's the only difference between us in this room. You had every reason to believe the man who buried your father's work. I had every reason to distrust the woman who buried mine. Grief makes you trust the wrong hands. Anger makes you count fingers. He turned his head. They were close now, both crouched, the amber light between them, and the thing that had been building all night, the wrong number, the door she'd opened by her own hand, the agreement sealed with a careful grip, pulled the air tight. For a moment neither of them moved, and the moment had a shape, and they both felt it take that shape. Celeste stood up first, not fast, but first. I'll open it tomorrow, she said, brushing dust off her knee, putting the room back to its proper size. Molding off in one piece, you'll want to be here, and bring the written authorization, your name. Do-hyun rose more slowly. Whatever had gathered in the light let go, and both of them let it, and neither pretended it hadn't been there. My name, he agreed. She gathered her sample case, folded the tablet under her arm, and let him walk her to the corridor. At the door of the 4th room she stopped, because a thought had been standing at the back of her since he'd said the second clock. waiting to be let in. Your uncle filed the inspection under a safety review of the upper floors, she said. Who signs the city's copy of that filing? Owner or officer? Do-hyun went very still. Officer, he said. He'd have signed it vice president, my father's seat, the one he's held since I was 20. Then the city has his signature on a document that opens this wall on his schedule, Celeste said. Dated, notarized probably, on file. She watched the implication reach him. If it ever matters who wanted this room opened and when, that paper says his name and his date, in the city's own hands, where he can't take it back. For the second time that night she watched Kang Do-hyun look at her as if she'd handed him something he hadn't known he needed. Not gratitude, recognition, the look of one careful person clocking another. You think about the record, he said. The record's the only thing that doesn't lie later, she said. People change their story. Walls get repainted. Paper with a date on it stays where you put it. She thought of the separate sleeve at the back of Meredith's file. The contract Seong-jae had signed, filed away like a thing meant to be forgotten. I keep everything. It's the job. She went down the hall to the guest room, and behind her she heard him not move for a long moment, and then the soft double click of the amber lamp being switched off by a hand that knew its temper. In the guest room, the cedar smell had gone familiar. She set the sample case down, plugged nothing in, left the lamp alone as she'd been told. On the dresser, the pepper spray sat where she'd left it, by her own choice hours earlier, and she looked at it and did not pick it up, and understood that the not picking it up was itself a decision she'd keep making until it stopped needing to be made. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the tablet one last time. 2 floor plans, 40 centimeters. She added a note in the margin, time-stamped, in the flat language of a record that might have to speak for her someday. Seam refilled within 6 months, non-professional. City inspection filed by K. Seong-jae approx. 2 weeks prior. Council vote in 14 days. 2 hands in this wall. She read it twice. She saved it. She did not send it. Then she typed a second note, and this one wasn't for the file. It was for herself, and she knew it, and she wrote it anyway. Do not become the fresh coat of paint. Not for Meredith, not for him. Outside the storm had begun, at last, to thin. The rain came softer against the glass, and somewhere far below the grid was coming back in pieces, the city relighting itself block by block the way a thing does after the water lets go. 12 days to the inspection, 14 to the vote, and a wall with 2 frightened, patient sets of fingerprints inside it, waiting for morning, and a piece of paper with the right name at the bottom. Celeste set the tablet face down on the nightstand, lay back on the narrow bed in the cobra silk she still hadn't changed out of, and stared at the ceiling molding. Old, original, one continuous unbroken run of it above her, made by the same uncredited hand that had wired a lamp to fail politely and soldered a dragon soft into its collar. She didn't sleep for a long time. She was doing arithmetic. Down the corridor, behind the 4th door, so was he. And in an office across a flooded city, in a file drawer neither of them could see, Meredith Vale's separate sleeve held a contract with Kang Seong-jae's name on it, filed at the back, out of the light, the way careful people hide the thing they hope no one will ever measure. The written authorization came at 6:40 in the morning, slid under the guest room door on a single sheet of obsidian letterhead, signed in ink at the bottom in a hand Celeste had not seen before. She was already awake, still in the cobra dress, kneeling to read it in the gray light before the lamps decided to wake. She read it twice, then a third time, the way she read everything. The name at the bottom was Kang Do-hyun, not vice president, not the seat his father had held, just his name, and the words she had asked for, exactly as she had dictated them the night before. Client authorizes the controlled opening of the rear wall of the penthouse front room as a documented preservation finding, molding removed in one piece, photographed for record only. She folded it once and put it in the inside pocket of her sample case, the one with the zipper. Down the corridor she found him already in the front room. He had moved the standing lamp himself, angled it toward the blue tape, and he had not slept either. She could tell from the way he held his coffee, both hands, like the cup was the only warm thing in the tower. You didn't have to sign it yourself, she said. Legally, Seong-jae is still the officer of record. That's why, Do-hyun said. She set her tools on the drop cloth she'd laid last night. Trina, the small pry bar, the camera on its strap, the little vial of solvent, the brush. She worked the way she always worked, which was slowly, and she felt him watching the slowness like it was a language he was learning. "I need Hyun-woo," she said. "2 witnesses on record, not 1. If I open it alone with you, the council can say we staged it." "He's coming up." Do-hyun checked the watch on his wrist without seeming to. "He's been on the freight log since 4. Find anything? He'll tell you himself. He trusts paper more than he trusts me right now." Celeste glanced up. That was closer to the truth than most men let out before breakfast. She filed it and went back to the seam. Hyun-woo arrived with a laptop under one arm and a scanner case in his other hand. The good one. The ground-penetrating unit the firm rented by the day, and Celeste had signed out under Meredith's account. He set it down and looked at the tape on the wall, then at the drop cloth, then at her. "You're really opening it." "Correctly," she said. "There's a difference. Set the scanner. I want a full read before the pry bar touches anything. If the council asks why I cut, I show them the scan that told me to." He crouched and powered the unit. Do-hyun stood back against the window, out of the frame, which she noticed and did not comment on. He had learned already that she wanted the record clean. It made her trust him a fraction more, and she hated that it did. The scanner woke with a soft tone. Hyun-woo ran the head along the wall in slow verticals, left to right, the way she showed him, and the screen filled with the ghost-gray return of density behind the plaster. Celeste knelt beside him and read it upside down first, then walked around. For the first meter it read the way she expected. Solid pour behind the plaster, the concrete she'd smelled in the shaving, dense and dead. Then the head crossed the hollow she'd found by knuckle, and the return changed. "Stop," she said. "Go back, slow." He backed the head across the hollow. The screen didn't show empty. It showed a cavity, yes, a void behind the concrete shell. But the void wasn't clean, it was crossed. Lines ran through it, vertical and then one hard horizontal, and where they crossed, the machine stuttered, the return blooming white and useless. "That's not rebar," Hyun-woo said. "No," she leaned in. "Rebar reads as a grid, even spacing, same depth. This is," she traced the air above the screen with one finger. "These run at different depths, and they're hollow. Rebar's solid. It throws a hard shadow. These throw a soft one. The machine can't decide how far away they are." "Meaning?" "Conduit." She sat back on her heels. "Pipe. Empty pipe or pipe with wire in it. Somebody ran services into that cavity, and the cavity was built to hold them." Do-hyun came off the window. "Services to what?" "There's nothing behind that wall but the elevator core. That's what the plan says." Celeste pulled her tablet, laid the overlay beside the scanner screen. The plan also said the wall was flush to the glass, and it's 40 centimeters short. The plan is a story somebody told the city. "This," she tapped the stuttering white bloom, "is what's actually there." She ran the scan herself then, 3 more passes, and each time the machine choked in the same place, and each time she noted the coordinates in the memo, time-stamped, her voice flat and even. "Cavity confirmed, 40 by 90 by unknown depth, conduit present, at least 2 runs, non-structural signature." She said the last part twice, so the recording had it clean. Non-structural, that was the word that mattered. Seong-jae had filed the safety inspection as a structural review. But the wall wasn't holding the building up. The wall was hiding plumbing for something, and you did not seal a mistake behind 40 centimeters of poured concrete and then run pipe into it. You ran pipe into a thing you meant to use. "Someone built this to keep working," she said quietly. "Not to bury it, to reach it." Hyun-woo looked at Do-hyun. Do-hyun looked at the wall like it had said his name. She stood, rolled her shoulders once, and picked up the pry bar. "I'm opening the molding. 1 piece. Hyun-woo, camera. You call the timestamps. I keep both hands on the tool. Do-hyun, you don't touch anything, and you don't stand where the lens can see you. Agreed?" "Agreed," Do-hyun said. She found the seam Hyun-woo had confirmed the night before, the cut and recalked line where a frightened hand had gone in and come out. She worked the thin edge of the bar under the original molding above it, not the new patch, the old run, the continuous plaster she'd studied for 2 days. Old molding came off in one length if you loved it, and broke in 6 if you didn't. She loved it. She walked the bar along the top in inch increments, tapping, easing, letting the plaster tell her where it wanted to release. It came away in one piece, 1.5 meters of it, and she laid it on the drop cloth like a body and photographed it before she looked at the wall behind. Behind the molding, where the plaster met the ceiling line, was wood. Not lath, not backing, a panel of dark hardwood, fitted, old, the grain running vertical, and it had no business being there. Plaster walls don't wear a wooden crown under the molding. This one did, and the wood was older than the concrete, older than the seal, older than the story anyone had told about this room. Celeste went very still. "Light," she said. "Bring the lamp up. Close." Hyun-woo swung the standing lamp. The amber threw its warm wash across the wood, and in the raked light, low and sideways, the grain stopped being just grain. There was a mark in it, carved, shallow, worn nearly flat, filled once with something dark that had mostly gone. She got her face close enough to fog it. A shape. Curved spine, hooked jaw, a coil beneath, the same figure she'd seen in the lobby stone and the frieze overhead, and the soft dragon soldered into the lamp's own collar an arm's length from her face right now, but smaller here, and enclosed, ringed by a circle, and inside the circle, beneath the dragon, 3 short vertical strokes cut clean and deliberate. Do-hyun, her voice had changed and she heard it change. "Come look. Stay out of the lens, but come look." He crossed the drop cloth and knelt beside her without being told where, close but not touching, and when the amber light found the carving, he stopped breathing in a way she felt more than heard. "You know this mark?" she said, not a question. He reached toward it and pulled his hand back before it landed, the way she had pulled her hand back from 100 original surfaces. "It's on the ring," he said. "What ring?" "My father's." He kept his eyes on the wood, the one the head of the family wears, the dragon in a ring, and 3 marks under it. His jaw worked. 1 stroke for each generation that held the seat. "My grandfather cut the first. My father cut the second." He stopped. "And the third?" "The third was cut the year he died." Do-hyun sat back on his heels. "By the man who took the seat while I was burying him. The room did the thing rooms do, when a name that hasn't been said yet fills them anyway. Seong-jae. 3 strokes, the third one his." Celeste photographed the carving before she let herself think another thought about it. Wide, then close, then the ruler laid beside it for scale, Hyun-woo calling each frame. She would not lose it to a feeling. She kept everything. It was the job. "It's not decoration," she said, when the camera had it. "You don't carve a family crest inside a wall and then bury it under concrete for the fun of it. This is a mark for a maker, a signature, or an instruction." "An instruction for what?" She didn't answer. She was looking at the 3 strokes, and then at the panel around them, and then at the wall to either side of the panel, because the panel had edges, fitted edges, and a fitted panel with a maker's mark on it, set into a wall built to hide conduit you were meant to reach again. That was not a wall at all. She pressed her palm flat to the wood beside the carving, then above it. Then she slid her hand to the left along the top edge, until her fingers found the seam where this panel met the next. And there was a next. She could feel the join, hairline, dead straight, machined. "There's more than one." She moved down the wall, both hands now, reading it like Braille, and Do-hyun watched her hands the way she'd watched him, not touch the carving. 3. There are 3 panels. She found the outer seams, the divisions, the places where the maker had said this piece, this piece, this piece. It's a face. The whole rear wall is a face made of 3 panels, and the concrete was poured in front of it to keep anyone from ever reading it. Reading it how? That's what the marks are for. She came back to the ring and the 3 strokes and touched them one at a time. This isn't a crest, it's a diagram. 3 strokes, 3 panels. Somebody carved the instructions right onto the lock and trusted that the only people who'd ever get this deep would already know how to turn it. Ha Hyun-woo had gone quiet behind the camera. Do-hyun was looking at the carving now like it had reached back through 9 years and taken hold of his sleeve. "Who builds a wall like this?" Celeste said. "Not a contractor. A contractor pours the concrete. But the wood, the fit, the mark, Someone designed this. Someone who knew the crest well enough to sign it, and knew architecture well enough to hide a mechanism inside a landmark interior and have it read, for 90 years, as nothing but a pretty wall. She looked at him. The uncredited hand, the one the city file says drew this penthouse and was never named. That's whose signature is in this wood. Do-hyun didn't speak for a long moment. His hand had come to rest on his own knee, and his knuckles were white. My mother was an architect, he said. The lamp hummed. Outside, the storm-washed morning was turning the glass from gray to a thin gold. She trained in Seoul, he said, and his voice had gone somewhere far back. Before she married my father, the family didn't let the wives work. It wasn't done. A short breath through the nose that wasn't a laugh. She worked anyway, quietly. She never signed anything with her name. She signed with that. He nodded at the ring in the wood, the dragon, the strokes, the family mark. So the work would live in the family and never in her name. She thought that was safe. She thought a name was the dangerous thing to own. Celeste sat back on the drop cloth. The pieces she'd been carrying for 2 days shifted and locked. The soft dragon in the lamp collar, feminine, made by hand. The molding on this one wall newer than the other 3, because this was the wall she'd built last and best. The interior attributed to an uncredited hand, original drawings not located. She designed the penthouse, Celeste said. She co-designed it, with the man they hired to put a name on the permits. He looked up at the relief ceiling, the one continuous run of plaster genius overhead. That's hers, all of it. The ceiling, the herringbone, the way the light comes in at the equinox and hits the far wall. People have written about this room for 80 years, and none of them know a woman in a borrowed name made every choice in it. His jaw tightened, including this one. Whatever this one is? Do-hyun. Celeste kept her voice level, because someone in the room had to. When did she die? The year before my father did. He said it to the ceiling. I was 19. My father sealed this room the year after. Grief, the family said. Then he died, and my uncle told me the wall was structural remediation, and I was 20 and I had just buried both of them, so I believed him. He finally looked at her. You told me last night there were 2 hands in this wall, one frightened, one patient. There are. My mother built the mechanism. His voice dropped. Somebody else came back 6 months ago and cut into it in the dark. And my uncle poured the concrete in between, 9 years ago, to make sure the 2 would never meet. Celeste looked at the 3 panels she could now see everywhere she looked, the seams she'd been blind to for 2 days because she'd been told a wall was a wall. She thought about the conduit that ran into a cavity somebody meant to reach again. She thought about a woman who signed her whole life with a mark that belonged to men, and cut that mark one last time into a hidden door, in a language only her family could read, betting that her family would one day be the ones to open it. She left this for someone, Celeste said. She built a lock in the shape of your family's own crest, and she buried it where only blood could find it. That's not hiding something, that's leaving a message and trusting the right person to be the one who reads it. And my uncle sealed it before I could. Your uncle sealed it, she said slowly, and then, 9 years later, requested a city inspection that forces it open, 2 days before a preservation vote, with his own engineer standing by. She was on her feet now, moving, the way she moved when the shape came clear. He didn't seal it to bury it forever. He sealed it to control when it opened, and who was standing there when it did. He's been waiting 9 years for the moment he could open your mother's door on his terms and call whatever's inside his own. Do-hyun stood too. Then what's inside? I don't know yet. She turned back to the wall, to the ring, the dragon, the 3 clean strokes. But your mother carved the instructions right here and dared the family to be worthy of them. 3 panels. There's a way to open this that doesn't need a pry bar. She'd never have let a controlled mind like hers be cracked with a crowbar. She pressed her palm to the first panel again. This opens the way she built it to open, and she told us how. We just have to be the ones who deserve to understand it. Hyun-woo lowered the camera. You're saying his mother left a combination lock made of carvings, and the code is the family crest. I'm saying she left 3 panels and 3 strokes and a symbol only 4 people alive would recognize. Celeste looked at Do-hyun, and one of them poured concrete over it. So, no, I'm not opening this today, not by force, not before I've read every mark on every panel and I understand the sequence she intended. If I break it, I break her, and whatever she was protecting. The inspection is in 11 days, Hyunwoo said. The vote in 13. Then we have 11 days to learn to read a dead woman's handwriting. She was already photographing the seams, the joins, the outer edges of the 3 panels, methodical, time-stamped, Hyunwoo falling back into calling frames without being asked. Before your uncle's engineer stands in this room and reads it his way. Do-hyun had gone to the carving and crouched before it, and for the first time since she'd met him at a locked door in a crimson shirt, he looked like the 20-year-old who had buried both parents and believed his uncle, because grief made belief the easier thing. He reached out and this time let 2 fingers rest, barely, on the 3 strokes. I touched this ring my whole life, he said. Every family dinner, my uncle's hand on the table. I never once looked at what was under the dragon. His fingers traced the 3rd stroke, the one cut the year his father died. She was in the wall the entire time, signing her work where he wore hers on his hand. Don't, Celeste said it gently. Don't touch the marks. Oil from your skin. I need them clean until I've read them. He drew his hand back and, for the length of a breath, looked at her the way a man looks at the one person in a burning house who knows where the door is. You read walls, he said. I read what people hide in them. She capped her camera. Your mother hid a message for her family. Your uncle hid the message from her son, and Meredith Vale sent me up here to be the clean pair of hands that opens all of it on somebody else's schedule and gets none of the credit, which is the 3rd time in a week someone in my life has poured a fresh coat over a woman's real work and signed a man's name to it. That landed in her own chest harder than she meant it to, and she saw it land in his. I'm not doing it their way, she said. Not for Meredith, not for your uncle, and not, if you make me choose, for you. She held his eyes. I open this door correctly, in the light, with both of you on record, when I understand what she built and not 1 hour before. Or I don't open it at all, and I walk into that council chamber in 13 days and tell them exactly what I found and let the city pull the concrete off your mother's name in front of a camera. Your choice. But you choose now, because I'm not spending 11 days learning to read her hand only to have you flinch at the end. Do-hyun stood slowly. Hyunwoo had gone still by the window, the way men go still when the weight in a room shifts, and they're not the ones holding it anymore. Read her hand, Do-hyun said. Whatever it costs, read it and open it right. He looked at the wall, at the ring, at the mother he'd been standing outside of for 9 years. She waited long enough for someone honest to find it. Celeste looked at the 3 panels and the 3 strokes and the dragon coiled inside its ring, and she understood that the story she'd been hired to write, a wall, a discrepancy, a controlled opening on a preservation timeline, was not the story at all. The story was a woman who'd signed her genius in a code, a brother-in-law who'd buried it in concrete, and a son who'd worn ignorance the way she'd worn a borrowed name. And now the story was hers to open, one panel at a time, in the right order or ruin. She knelt back down at the wall and put her light where the mother had put her mark, and began, very carefully, to read. The first panel gave up its edges within the hour. She mapped them in pencil on a sheet of tracing paper taped to the plaster, the way you record a thing before you presume to move it. Each seam ran true to a hair. Whoever cut these had cut them cold, in a shop, to a drawing, and the drawing had not survived, or had survived somewhere she hadn't found yet. Talk to me, Do-hyun said. He had pulled a chair from the hall and set it back where the lens couldn't reach, and sat with his forearms on his knees. What are you seeing? Order. Celeste didn't look up. She built this to be opened in a sequence, not all at once. Look. She laid the flat of her hand on the left panel and pushed. Nothing. Center panel. Nothing. They don't move on their own. Something releases them, and the release is the sequence. 3 strokes. She told us there's a first, a second, a third. She sat back. I just don't know which stroke is the first. Cut left to right, Hyunwoo offered. That's how you'd read them. That's how you'd read them. In English. Celeste looked at Do-hyun. How would she have carved them? He was quiet a moment. Right to left, top down, then right to left. She wrote her notes to me that way when I was small. It drove my tutors mad. Then the first stroke isn't the leftmost. Celeste moved her light to the rightmost of the 3 marks and studied the wood around it, the faint dishing where a thumb might have pressed 1,000 times in the carving, or once, deliberately, in the using. There. That one's worn deeper than the other two. She touched it more. Or she meant whoever came after to touch it first. Do-hyun leaned forward off the chair before he caught himself and sat back. Then press it. No. She capped her pencil. Not until I've read all three and I know what the second and third do. You press the first before you understand the third, and you've told the wall you don't respect it. Some mechanisms only give you one wrong move. She looked at him, steady. Your mother built this careful. I'll open it careful, or I don't touch it. That's the whole trade. He held her eyes and then, slowly, nodded, and something in his shoulders came down that had been up since a locked door 2 nights ago. She went back to the wood and the amber light and the 3 worn strokes a woman had cut into her family's own name, and she read the way she'd read her whole life, as if the wall were telling the truth and everyone who'd talked over it had been lying. Behind her, Do-hyun's phone lit against the window glass. He turned it face down before she could see the name on it, but she saw his shoulders change, and she filed that too, the way she filed everything, and she did not yet know that the name on the screen was Sungjae's, or that the message under it read only, I hear the wall is open. We should talk before the girl finds the rest. The lights died at 4:12 in the afternoon. Not a flicker. A drop. The front room went from amber and thin gold to nothing, all at once. And the low hum Celeste had stopped hearing hours ago stopped being there to hear. Her pencil hovered over the vellum. The 3 worn strokes she'd been tracing vanished under her own hand. Hyun-woo, Do-hyun said. One word, flat. On it. A chair scraped somewhere behind her. Footsteps crossed to the panel by the pantry. A latch. A breaker thrown, then thrown again. It's the whole floor. Buildings on the emergency feed. This one shouldn't be dark. But it is, Celeste said. She set the pencil down where she could find it. Her eyes were already adjusting. The city still burned outside the tall windows, 41 floors of it, so the room wasn't black. It was gray, edged in the orange of a skyline that never fully turned off. Enough to see shapes, not enough to read a woman's handwriting cut into dark wood. Somebody killed the feed to your penthouse and left the rest of the tower running, she said. That's not a storm. The storm's over. Do-hyun didn't answer that. He moved, and she heard him more than saw him. The shift of weight, the length of his stride shorter in the dark, careful. He'd been in this room 10,000 times. He crossed it like a man who didn't need his eyes. Get the amber lamp, he told Hyun-woo. It's on its own cell. Mother wired it that way. For this exact reason, probably, Celeste said, and heard the smallest sound from Do-hyun that might have been a breath through the nose, the closest thing to a laugh she'd gotten out of him. Hyun-woo's phone light bobbed toward the guest room. It went with him, and for a moment, 10 seconds, 12, the front room held only the 2 of them, and the burning gray, the mechanism between them gone invisible, the vellum a pale smear on the floor. Celeste stood. Her knees ached from the hours down. She stood too fast and the blood left her head, and she put a hand out for the nearest thing, which was not the wall. It was him. Her palm landed flat on his chest, on the carmine shirt gone black in the dark, and she felt his heartbeat through it, once, hard, before she found her balance. She didn't pull the hand back right away. That was the thing she'd think about later. There was a beat where she could have and didn't. Sorry, she said. Stood up too fast. I have you. He did. His hand had come to her elbow, not gripping. Just there, the way you'd steady a ladder you weren't going to climb. In the gray, she could see the shape of his jaw, the line of his shoulder, the tilt of his head coming down toward her, because she was looking up, and neither of them had stepped back. She was aware of the exact distance. 6 inches. 5. The heat of him after a cold 2 days in a stone tower. The clean smell of him under the cedar and old paper of a dead woman's room. Her own pulse in her throat, loud enough she was sure he could hear it, sure the way you're sure of foolish things in the dark. The lamp's coming, she said. I know. So, he agreed, and didn't move. She thought about the vellum on the floor, and the 11 days on the clock, and the note she'd written herself 2 nights ago, the one she could recite, do not become the fresh coat of paint. Not for Meredith. Not for him. She thought about all of it in the half-second it took to lean up the last 5 inches and kiss him. She kissed him. That was the order of it. and she'd hold on to the order later like it was the only thing she owned. Not him pulling her in. Her, deciding, the way she'd decided to open the fourth door. By her own hand, no one's arrangement. His breath caught. His hand tightened on her elbow, just once, and then his other hand found the side of her face like he was reading something there. Careful, unhurried. A man handling the one object in the room he'd been told not to break. She felt the calluses on his fingers. She felt him lean into it, all that height and weight folding down to meet her. And then she pulled back. 2 inches. Enough. Her hand was still on his chest, and she pressed it there now. Not toward, away. A flat, firm no against her own wanting. "That's the coat of paint," she said. Her voice came out rougher than she meant. "That's the exact thing I said I wouldn't do." He let go of her face immediately. Both hands, gone, open at his sides where she could see them. Her own breath was ragged, and she hated that it was. She could still taste him. She could still feel the exact weight of his hand against her jaw, the way he'd held her like a drawing he was afraid to smudge, and she wanted. This was the truth she folded away and pressed flat under everything else. She wanted to close the 2 inches again and stop being careful for 1 hour of her life. She stayed where she was instead. Careful was the whole job. Careful was the only thing no one had ever been able to take from her. "Celeste, I opened the wall for the record, not for you." She stepped back, and her heel found the vellum, and she crouched fast to save it. Glad of the excuse, glad to have her face pointed at the floor. If I do this, and then I do that, then the council's right. Then I'm exactly what Meredith called me, supported the survey work, the woman who got close to the client. She flattened the sheet. Her hands weren't steady. She made them steady. I've been the thing men build in front of the real work my whole life. I'm not going to be the thing you build in front of yours. Silence from above her. Long. "All right," he said. "Just that." And she understood, kneeling there in the dark, that a lesser man would have argued, and that his not arguing was the most dangerous thing he'd done yet. The amber lamp came around the corner then, warm and low, Hyunwoo carrying it by the wrought base with the cord trailing, and the front room swam back into gold. The mechanism, the vellum, the 3 strokes. Do-hyun already 3 steps away, his back half turned, looking out at the city like the city owed him an explanation. "Battery lanterns coming up too," Hyunwoo said, setting the lamp on the floor near her. If he'd seen anything in the gray, his face gave nothing. He was a man who'd built a career on giving nothing, and I found why the feed's dead. Someone pulled the junction in the service riser. Same riser with the cut weld. Cut clean this time. Recent. Today recent? Within the hour. Celeste looked up at that. So while 3 of us were in this room, someone was in the riser behind that wall, in the dark, killing our lights. "Someone with a key I didn't issue," Hyunwoo said, "and a face that isn't on my logs, in a building where I now have every weld in the stack photographed." He crouched to her level. "Which means they're not getting in that way again. But they were here, today. That's the part I don't like." "The scared hands," Celeste said. "Back for a 4th time. Or the patient ones. Getting bold." Do-hyun turned back from the window. Whatever had been in his voice a minute ago was locked away now. "Iron. Open it, Celeste. Today, I don't want to give them another night." She looked at the vellum, at the 3 strokes, at the right-hand one worn deepest. She'd said she wouldn't press a panel until she understood all 3. She still didn't, fully, but she understood the sequence now the way you understand a sentence before you can parse every word. The maker had written right to left, top to bottom, and the deepest wear was where a thumb had gone 100 times. "I'm not doing it with 3 people in a story," she said, standing. "If this opens onto anything, I want it witnessed by people the council can't wave off. Not the owner, not the owner's security. Name them. An attorney. Yours is fine, as long as it's on record they were present as a witness, not counsel giving me instructions." She was already pulling her phone. "And Dr. Evelyn Shaw." Hyunwoo's head came up. "Who?" "Historic preservation specialist, municipal consultant. She advises the same council that's voting in 11 days. Celeste found the contact, thumbed it. "If Evelyn Shaw watches me open this wall and signs that it was opened cleanly, as a preservation find, then Seongjae's engineer can't walk in on inspection day and call it damage. She's the one person in this city whose signature outranks the story anyone's trying to tell. You'd bring a council advisor into a sealed floor under NDA, Do-hyun said slowly. I'd bring the record into the room before the record can be forged. She met his eyes and didn't look away. You want a clean architect. This is what clean costs. She sees everything, or I don't open it. A muscle moved in his jaw. He looked at Hyun-woo. Hyun-woo lifted one shoulder. She's right. Again, the same gesture from 2 nights ago. Call her, Do-hyun said. Evelyn Shaw arrived in 90 minutes, in a green suit and flat shoes, carrying nothing but a legal pad and her own small camera, and she did not shake anyone's hand until she'd read the written authorization twice and asked who Kang Do-hyun was and why his name and not the vice president's was on the paper. Because the vice president signed the last 3 documents in this building and every one of them was a lie, Do-hyun said. This one's mine. Shaw looked at him a long moment over the gold frames of her glasses. I'm here for the building, she said, not for you. You understand the difference, I'll stay. Understood. The attorney came with her, a woman in her 50s with a recorder she set on the floor and announced the date, the time, the address, and the names of everyone present, one by one, before she said another word. Hyun-woo ran the second camera. The battery lantern threw hard white from the corner. The amber lamp threw gold from the floor. Celeste knelt in both lights and put her thumb on the rightmost stroke. For the record, she said, I'm about to actuate a wooden mechanism, original to the interior, concealed behind a poured concrete face installed 9 years ago. I believe it opens in sequence. I'm documenting before, during, and after. She pressed. The panel gave a 1/4 inch and stopped, with a sound like a knuckle cracking inside the wall. Old wood, old grease, decades of stillness. She moved to the center stroke and pressed that, and felt something behind the boards travel, a counterweight, a pin, a woman's engineering rolling awake after 20 years of dark. The middle panel sank and slid left, riding a track she couldn't see. 2, the attorney said quietly, for the recorder. The third stroke, the leftmost, Celeste pressed it and held, and the whole left panel swung inward on a hinge oiled by no one in living memory, and the wall opened. Not a gap, a room within the wall. A compartment the depth of the 40 centimeters she'd measured on her first morning with a laser, 18 inches high, 3 feet wide, lined in the same dark wood, dry as a bone from the concrete that had sealed it against the weather of 9 years. Nobody breathed. Even Shaw, who'd seen 100 walls give up their secrets, leaned in with her lips parted. Inside, a flat steel box, the kind that outlasts fires. 2 rolled tubes of drawings, tied with cord gone brittle. A woman's drafting set in a leather roll, the tools gone dark with age. And a stack of documents, banded, sitting square in the center like they'd been placed by someone who expected them to be found by someone who'd care. Celeste didn't grab. She photographed. Wide, then close, then with the ruler. She narrated every object. She let Shaw's camera find its own angles. Only then, with gloved fingers, did she lift the banded stack and turn it to the lantern. The top sheet was a drawing, the cobalt ink of an original, a plan of this exact floor, and in the corner, where a name should go, the mark, the dragon in the ring, 3 strokes beneath. Signed the way the woman signed everything. Not with a name, with the family's own crest, claimed by the one person the family never let claim anything. That's her hand, Do-hyun said. His voice did something it hadn't done before. It broke, just at the edge, and came back. That's my mother's floor. He crouched then, slow, next to Celeste, and for a moment he was not a man who owned a tower. He was a boy of 19, looking at a signature he'd been told for 20 years did not exist. He reached toward the cobalt mark and stopped his hand an inch above it, the way she'd stopped hers above 3 worn strokes, the way you stop before touching a thing you've wanted too long to risk breaking. Don't, Celeste said, gentle. Oil's on your fingers. She'd have known that. Let it stay hers a minute longer. He pulled the hand back. He nodded. He stayed crouched, watching. Shaw was already photographing it herself, murmuring into her own recorder about cobalt iron ink and rag paper and attribution. Celeste turned to the next sheet. A structural section. The next, a schedule of finishes. The next, correspondence. In Korean, a letter, and beneath it, a translation someone had clipped, decades ago. And then she reached the sheet that should have been there, and wasn't. She knew it the way she knew everything, before she could have said why. The banded stack had a rhythm to it, a logic, plan, section, schedule, letter, and then a tab, a hand-lettered tab in the same cobalt ink that read, in English and in Korean, the two words that made her stomach drop. The tab said, ownership. Behind the tab, nothing, a torn edge. A stub of rag paper still caught under the band where a single heavy sheet had been pulled free, not cut, not clean, torn out by someone in a hurry, someone with scared hands, someone who'd left the tab because they hadn't looked, or hadn't cared, or hadn't had the light. There's a page missing, Celeste said. Shaw's pen stopped. You're certain? The tab's here, the sheet's gone, torn, not removed by the maker, she'd have cut it square, everything else is square. Celeste held it to the lantern so both cameras caught the stub, the fibers, the cobalt bleeding into the tear. Whatever this was, it was the one page somebody came back 4 times to get, and they already have it. The scared hands, Hyunwoo said. They didn't come to hide something. Celeste sat back on her heels, the whole shape of it turned over in her head, ugly and clear. They came to take the one page that says who this building belongs to, and they got it. Months ago, maybe. The cut seam, the fresh caulk, that wasn't sealing it up. That was closing the door behind them on the way out. Do-hyun had gone very still. Then Seung-jae's inspection isn't to reveal the wall. It's to make the wall public with the one page already gone, so that when the city opens it officially, the record shows a family compartment with drawings and no title. Nothing that contradicts whatever he's already filed downtown. She looked up at him. He's not racing us to open it. He opened it already. He's racing us to be the one who tells the story of an empty box. The attorney cleared her throat and, for the record, in the flat voice of a woman who'd learned to make catastrophe sound procedural, noted the time, the missing sheet, the intact tab, and the fact that all present observed the compartment to have been previously accessed. That was the moment Celeste's phone lit up on the floor beside the vellum. She almost didn't look. Then she saw the name, Reina, and 3 photos loading, one after another, and a single line of text underneath that turned her cold before she'd read a word of it. The photos were of her. Copper dress, amber lamp, red mouth. The selfie she'd sent to the wrong number 2 nights ago. The one meant for Reina and gone to Do-hyun's private line. Except it wasn't the selfie anymore. It had been paired, side by side, with a second image. Her, today, in this room, standing close to a man in a red shirt in the gray dark. Shot through the tall window from another building, or from a drone, or from the riser, she couldn't tell, and it didn't matter. The angle made it look like exactly one thing. It made her hand on his chest look like a beginning, not an ending. Reina's text. Babe, these are going around. Someone sent them to the whole office. Meredith has them. Call me right now. Celeste stood up with the phone in her hand, and every eye in the compartment-lit room came to her. They leaked, she said. The photo I sent by mistake, and one from today. Somebody was in the riser with a camera before they killed the lights. She was already dialing, already walking toward the window, like distance from the others would help. Reina, slow down. But it wasn't Reina's voice she'd end up hearing first. Her phone buzzed against her ear mid-ring, call waiting, and the name that stacked over Reina's was one she'd been reporting to for 4 years. Meredith Vale. She let Reina go. She took the other line. Celeste. Meredith's voice was smooth, the way a frozen lake is smooth. I'm going to need you to explain some photographs. Meredith, I have you, in a dress, in the client's private residence, at night, on a project where you signed an NDA and a conflict clause. A pause, precise. I have you standing against the owner of Obsidian Holdings, like the 2 of you forgot the cameras. I have timestamps. I have a rented ground-penetrating scanner on the firm's account that you never logged, which means you've been opening things you had no written authority to open. I have written authority. Celeste's voice stayed level. Barely. Signed by the principal. I opened a preservation find, witnessed, on the record. Evelyn Shaw is standing 10 feet from me, the city's own advisor. The silence on the line lasted exactly as long as it took Meredith to recalibrate, and Celeste heard it happen, Heard the woman drop one plan and pick up another without a hitch. Then you won't mind that I've already sent the board your file, Meredith said. As of an hour ago, you're removed from the Obsidian engagement. The firm is disavowing your access. And Celeste, a breath, almost kind, the paperwork's going to show you took the scanner without authorization, entered restricted areas without authorization, and compromised a client relationship. It's going to show a pattern. I've spent the afternoon making sure it shows a pattern. There it was, the wall trick, one more time. A new document poured in front of the real one before anyone could read what was underneath. You're forging a file, Celeste said quietly. I'm protecting the firm from an employee who lost her judgment in a penthouse. Meredith's voice didn't change. That was the worst of it. It didn't change at all. You're done at Vale and Row. Clean out your account access tonight. If you show up at that council vote and open your mouth, you'll do it as a woman my firm has already documented as unstable and unauthorized, and every word you say will land exactly that hard. Do you understand what I've built while you were up there in a dress? Celeste turned from the window. Do-hyun was watching her, and Evelyn Shaw, and the attorney with her recorder still running, and the open wall behind them all with its torn stub where the truth used to be. I understand you, she said, perfectly. She ended the call before Meredith could. The room waited, the lantern hummed. Somewhere below, in a building that had gone dark on purpose, a man she'd never seen was walking out with a page in his coat, and a woman across the city was pressing send on documents with Celeste's name at the top and lies underneath. I've been fired, Celeste said, to the room, to no one, to the record the attorney was still keeping, effective an hour ago, and the file she's putting in front of me is going to say I did all of this alone, off the books, unstable. A small laugh, no humor in it at all. She's making me the empty box, same as the wall. Do-hyun took one step toward her. Then we go tonight. My attorneys, the whole… No. The word came out flat and hard, and it stopped him cold. She held up the phone with her own face doubled on the screen. Then she held up her gloved hand, still faintly gray with the dust of a wall she'd opened clean. You knew, didn't you? Knew what? That there was more than the TO. 2 nights ago you turned your phone face down before I could see it. Today someone was in your riser with a camera. In a tower where a man walks out with a page, and nobody stops him. Her voice didn't rise. It sharpened. You've been getting messages. You've been carrying a risk in your pocket and letting me kneel on this floor for 2 days. Like the only danger in this room was a dead woman's engineering. Who's been texting you, Do-hyun? He didn't answer fast enough. And in the space where his answer should have been, Evelyn Shaw quietly closed her legal pad, and the attorney's recorder kept turning, and Celeste understood that she was standing in a room she'd opened with her own hands, holding a fired woman's phone, next to a man who'd known there was a second set of hands all along and hadn't said whose. Outside, 41 floors down, the tower's emergency feed hummed on for every floor but this one. Celeste peeled off one glove, finger by finger, and set it on the lip of the open wall. Whoever's been texting you, she said, sent me my own face tonight. So you're going to tell me his name, right now, on her recorder. She nodded at the attorney. For the record. Do-hyun looked at the open compartment, at his mother's mark, at the torn stub where the page that said who owned all of it used to be. Seong-jae, he said. It was Seong-jae. He texted me 2 nights ago. He said, his jaw worked. He said we should talk before the girl finds the rest. The recorder turned. Nobody moved. And you didn't tell me, Celeste said. No. She nodded, slow, once, the way she nodded when a beam came up 2 millimeters out and confirmed everything she'd feared and nothing she'd hoped. Then I opened the rest without you, she said, and picked up her phone and walked out of the dead man's room into a hallway lit by every floor but this one. The hallway phone rang before she reached the elevator. Not Raina, not Meredith, a number she'd never seen, 10 digits she memorized on sight because memorizing was the job. She let it ring twice. Then she answered and said nothing. Ms. Morgan. A man's voice, warm, older, the kind of warm that hands you a chair before it takes something from you. You've had a long day. I'd like to make the rest of it shorter. Who is this? Someone who admires careful work. You measure walls. You keep records. Rare in this business. A pause built to hold weight. I'm prepared to make your records unnecessary. She walked to the window at the end of the corridor and put her back to the glass so no one could photograph her mouth. Kang Sang-jae. The pause on his end told her she'd been right. She'd been right for 11 days. There's a number, he said. It's larger than the partnership Meredith Vale dangled and pulled back. It clears your name, which she has spent the afternoon dirtying. It settles the matter of the scanner, the photographs, the accusations. You walk into your own firm tomorrow instead of a hearing. All I ask is that you find nothing worth reporting at the council. A cavity, old conduit, nothing structural, which is, I'm told, exactly what you found. She kept her voice flat. You're offering to buy an assessment. I'm offering to buy peace, for both of us. His breath was even. The girl who leaked your photographs works for me, Ms. Morgan. She has worked for me for some time. Whatever Meredith Vale did today, she did with material I put in her hands. I can put it back in mine. There it was. He'd meant it as leverage. He'd handed her the seam. You leaked the photos, Celeste said. Silence. You gave Meredith the paired image. You've been running the leak from inside the firm. She pressed her thumbnail into the phone's edge. You just told me you did. I told you I can make your problem disappear. You told me you're the problem. She hung up. Her hand was steady. That surprised her later, when she thought about it. In the moment, it just held the phone, and the phone held 60 seconds of Kang Sang-jae naming himself, saved, time-stamped, back to the cloud before he'd finished his second sentence. She'd started the recording when she heard the word. Admires. Men who admired her work were the ones who came to bury it. She'd learned that in a conference room in the spring, from a woman in a beige suit, and she'd never unlearned it. She stood at the window a moment longer. 41 floors down, the city glittered, like it hadn't just tried to price her. A man had offered her a number larger than a partnership. He'd offered to clean her name and empty her records and hand her back a morning she wanted. And the thing he hadn't understood, the thing none of them understood, was that a woman who keeps everything doesn't sell the one page that matters. She reads it. She didn't go back into the mother's room. She rode down alone. Raina was waiting at the curb in a car with the engine running, because Raina had read 3 photographs and a broken phone call and decided her friend needed a driver more than an explanation. She reached across and opened the door. Get in. You look like a woman who found a body. I found a phone call. Celeste got in. Drive to your studio. Not my place. Not the firm. Raina drove. Under the streetlights, she kept glancing over, waiting, and when Celeste stayed quiet, she filled the silence with what she knew. The photos had gone to every desk at Vale and Row by 4. By 5, they were on a preservation blog with Celeste's name and the word. Misconduct. By 6, Meredith had sent a firm-wide memo about an internal review of a personnel matter. She moved fast, Raina said. Too fast. You don't build a case that clean in an afternoon. She didn't build it this afternoon. Celeste watched the tower shrink in the mirror. She's been building it for months. Raina took the turn onto the west side and let the wipers run once against nothing. You want to tell me who the client is yet? Because I signed nothing, and I've been photographing a man's neck through your reflection for 2 nights now, and I'd like to know whose neck. I still can't tell you the client. Celeste, I can tell you what he isn't. She turned in the seat. He isn't the one who hurt me. He let it happen by staying quiet. That's a different crime, and I'll bill him for it separately. She almost smiled. Raina caught it and didn't push, which was why Raina had been her friend for 9 years and Meredith had been her employer for 3. Evelyn Shaw was already at the studio when they arrived, still in the emerald suit, legal pad on her knee. She'd left the penthouse an hour behind Celeste and gone straight to the one person she trusted to have a printer and no stake in Obsidian Holdings. She stood when Celeste came in. I recorded the opening, Evelyn said. The compartment, the torn page, every person present. If Meredith Vale wants to say you fabricated a finding, she'll have to explain why a municipal advisor filmed it clean. She set her jaw. But I need to understand the page, the one that's gone, because a missing page is a hole, and holes don't vote. Celeste sat down. She laid her tablet on the table, opened the photographs of the compartment, and turned it so both women could see the tab lettered. Ownership. And the ragged stub behind it. Someone tore this out, she said. Months ago. Before the scanner. Before me. The seam I found, cut and recalked in the dark, 6 months back. That was someone leaving, not someone hiding. They came to take one page. The page that says who the building belongs to. Reyna leaned in. So it's gone. It's not gone. It's sold. Celeste hadn't known she believed it until she said it. Then she was certain. Seong-jae just told me the leak has been running from inside my firm for months. Meredith filed his contract in a separate sleeve the day I signed mine. I watched her do it. I didn't understand it. She's been his hand inside Vale and Row since before Obsidian was ever a project. She pulled up the contract scan Do-hyun had shown her, the 9-year-old builder's agreement, and set it beside the tab. Same signature. Same 3 orders. He needed someone with access to old paper, someone who could authenticate a document, quietly, and move it to a buyer without a paper trail. That's not a fixer. That's a preservation firm. That's Meredith. Evelyn's pen stopped. You're saying your employer found the ownership page and sold it. I'm saying she found it, and it's worth more torn out than left in. Celeste pulled the sleeve memory forward for both of them. The day the client's signature went into a separate pocket at the back of a folder, filed like a thing you hide from yourself. She authenticates paper for landmark boards. She has buyers who collect provenance the way other people collect art. A deed to a landmarked tower, torn from a hidden compartment, with a dead architect's ink on it. That isn't evidence to Meredith. That's inventory. And the buyer, Evelyn said slowly, would be the man who wanted the ownership question to disappear. The man who just called to buy my silence with money he stole through the accounts on the page he doesn't know still exists. Celeste opened the 3rd tube of images. Look at the drawing stock. My mother's, she caught herself. Do-hyun's mother's drawings are on rag paper, handmade. She layered it. Preservation people know handmade paper isn't one sheet. It's couched, pressed, sometimes 2 skins fused wet, so a drawing can carry a second surface underneath. She zoomed on the torn stub, on the fibers standing up along the tier. This didn't tear clean because it isn't one page. It's a laminate. Whoever pulled it took the top skin. The underskin, the couched layer, could still be in that compartment, in the box, fused to the drawing above it, invisible unless you're looking for a seam in paper, the way I look for a seam in a wall. The room went quiet in a different way. Reyna spoke first. You left it there. I left all of it there. It's evidence. It's in a fireproof box behind a documented opening with a municipal advisor's timestamp on it. Celeste stood, and I'm the only person alive who knows to look at the paper the way I look at the wall. Her set down the mug she'd been holding without drinking. Wait, you're telling me the proof that clears you is a piece of paper glued under another piece of paper? In a box? In a wall? In the penthouse of the man Meredith says you're too close to? She rubbed her face. That's not evidence, Celeste. That's a dare. It's a laminate, Celeste said. It's been sitting under a signature for 40 years because the woman who made it trusted the paper more than she trusted the men. I'm not going to be the one who fails her at the last skin. Evelyn closed her pad. Then we don't touch it tonight. We touch it in front of witnesses, on the record, or it's worth nothing at the council. She looked at Celeste. Which means you go back into that building, to him. Celeste didn't answer that. She thought about the pepper spray she'd left on a dresser by choice, twice. She thought about a man turning his phone face down against the glass. I go back for the paper, she said, not for him. Do-hyun was in the front room when she returned at dawn, in the same crimson shirt, and he stood when the elevator opened, like a man who hadn't sat since she'd left. Himu was behind him. Evelyn came in with her camera. The lawyer came in with her recorder, and named the date, the hour, the address, the people. Celeste didn't look at Do-hyun. She crossed to the compartment, put on fresh gloves, and lifted the topmost drawing under raking light from the amber lamp. She'd asked for the lamp before she'd said good morning to anyone. I need water, she said, distilled, a soft brush, and everyone's hands where the camera can see them. She worked the way she'd learned to read a wall, from the edge, patient, refusing to hurry a thing that had waited 9 years. Nobody spoke. The lawyer's recorder ran. Hyun-woo held the second camera at the angle she pointed him to, and held his breath with it. Do-hyun stood back, hands in view, a man learning to keep them there. She wetted the margin of the mother's floor plan, a millimeter at a time, and watched the fibers relax. She'd done this on 18th century ledgers and a water-damaged deed once, in a basement, at midnight, the same kind of midnight where she'd caught a beam's deflection nobody else would look for. The brush moved, and along the bottom edge, where the cobalt signature sat, a second skin lifted. Couched under the drawing, fused wet, decades ago, by a woman who signed with a mark instead of a name, because they wouldn't let her sign at all. She peeled it back with the brush. She photographed before she read. The underskin was a page of accounts. A block of Korean characters in a smaller hand, numbers in columns, routing strings, account numbers, a bank in Seoul and a shell in the Caymans. And at the bottom, in ink, a signature, not the family mark. Kang Seong-jae. It's a transfer schedule, Celeste said. Her voice didn't shake, and she was proud of that. Later. Signed by Song-jae. The building's ownership was moved into accounts he controls, dated the year Do-hyun's father died. Your mother drew the floor. Your mother's paper carried the proof underneath it the whole time. She looked up, not at Do-hyun, at Evelyn and the recorder. The top skin, the deed page, is what Meredith found and sold. But she didn't know the paper was 2 layers. She took the half that named an owner. She left the half that named a thief. Evelyn photographed it. The lawyer read the timestamp aloud. Do-hyun made a sound. He put his hand over his mouth. When he took it away, he said, "She left it for me. She built the wall so it couldn't be found by anyone who didn't love the paper. She built it so it couldn't be found by anyone who didn't." Read? The paper, Celeste said. That was you, for 9 years, and you didn't read it. Now she looked at him. You knew Seong-jae texted you. Before the girl finds the rest. You turned your phone face down. You let me open a wall with a man who told you there was a knife in it, and you didn't say the word. Knife. I was protecting. You were protecting me the way your father protected you, by sealing the room. She stripped off the gloves. I don't work sealed, not for Meredith, not for you. I know, he said. You knew 2 nights ago. You had a knife, and you called it a wall. She held his eyes so he'd have to hold hers. Every man in this story put a woman's work behind a fresh coat of paint. Your uncle did it with concrete. Meredith did it with a memo. Your family did it to your mother with a marriage, and you did it to me with a phone turned face down. Same crime, different tools. He took it standing. He didn't argue. That was the only thing he did right, and she noted it. There's a way I can help, he said quietly. There's a way you can stop deciding what I get to know. She put the paper into an archival sleeve in front of the camera and handed it to Evelyn, not to him. That's the only help I'll take. The city inspector came 2 days later, the one Seong-jae had summoned to make the wall public on his terms with his own engineer. He arrived to a room already opened, already documented, already witnessed by a municipal advisor. His engineer photographed conduit that held up nothing. His report, which Seong-jae had meant to read. Nothing structural, nothing to see. Now read into a public file 2 days before the vote, with the transfer schedule attached by the advisor as material to the interior's provenance. Seong-jae had built a clock to open a wall at the right moment. Celeste had opened it early, in the light, with the receipts he'd hidden inside it. The council met on the 11th day after that, in a chamber with bad carpet and worse acoustics, and Celeste came not as Meredith Vale's employee, she no longer was one, but as advisor of record, seconded by Dr. Evelyn Shaw, independent. Meredith was there. She'd brought the forged file in a leather folio and a lawyer of her own. She'd brought the memo about a personnel matter. She stood when the chair called the obsidian interior and began to speak about a former employee's pattern of unauthorized access. The chair let her finish. Then he asked Dr. Shaw to respond. Evelyn didn't respond. She played 90 seconds of a recording, a man's warm voice offering to buy an assessment, naming the leak as his own, saved to a cloud at 9:14 the night of the storm's end. Then she entered the transfer schedule. Then she entered the time-stamped opening, the 2 cameras, the lawyer's log. Then she said one sentence. The unauthorized access this council should be concerned with occurred 9 years ago, and it was financial. Meredith tried once more. She rose and said the recording was obtained without consent, the drawings unauthenticated, the whole assessment the product of a compromised relationship. And she'd have said more, except the chair asked, mild as milk, whether Vale and Rowe had authenticated any document connected to the Obsidian interior in the past year. Meredith's lawyer put a hand on her arm. She sat. The silence she left was the loudest thing she'd said all day. Celeste spoke last, and she spoke short. She laid the mother's drawings on the table, the floor, the spine, the equinox light, signed with a mark the city's own file had called. An uncredited hand, original drawings not located. She said the hand had a name now. She said the interior deserved protection, not because a holding company asked, but because a woman had designed it in secret and hidden the truth of the building inside her own paper, trusting that someone would one day read it. She said she was that someone, and it was the job. Then she sat down. The council designated the interior protected, unanimous, and referred the transfer schedule to the district attorney and the drawings to the city's architectural record under the name the mother had never been allowed to use. No one raised a voice. No one raised a hand. There was no gun in the room, no threat in the hallway, no black car at the curb. Kang Sung-jae was removed from the vice presidency of Obsidian Holdings by its principal that afternoon, in writing, and indicted within the month for the movement of assets the paper documented. His accounts froze on a judge's signature. The forged file Meredith had built came apart the moment the recording played. A firm that authenticates documents for a living cannot survive being caught selling one, and by the end of the quarter, Vale and Rowe had lost the 3 landmark contracts that were its spine. Meredith did not go to prison. She went smaller. That, Celeste decided, was worse, and she didn't waste a second grieving it. Do-hyun made his reparation in public, which was the only place it counted. He gave the city his mother's drawings, the originals, not copies, with her name on the gift and the family mark beside it, and a statement, read into the record and printed where anyone could read it, that the tower's most beautiful floor had been designed by a woman his family had erased, and that he had spent 9 years living above her work without knowing how to see it. He named Sung-jae. He named what Sung-jae had done to his father's chair and his mother's name. He didn't ask for sympathy. He asked the record to be corrected, and it was. He did it in a room with press in it, which cost him the thing his family had spent 3 generations buying, the silence, the holding company with no executives listed, the tower with no names. The Obsidian Dragon put his own on a public record and let the record keep it. Hyun-woo stood at the back and, when it was done, said only that Jae-sung would have wanted the paper straight. Do-hyun said his mother would have wanted it read. Those were different men, in the end, and the son had chosen the mother's word. He did one more thing. He sent Celeste a single sheet of paper, by hand, delivered under no door and through no lock. A courier at her new address. Signature required, so she'd know it came openly. It was the amended provenance file. At the bottom, where a client signs, he'd written only, "Read whatever you like. I'll keep nothing sealed." Not Vice President. Not a threat dressed as an invitation, just his name, and a door he'd stopped guarding. She read it twice. She put it in the inside pocket, the one with the zipper, where she kept the things that mattered. She didn't answer that day, or the next. She let him wait the way she'd once been made to wait, and she understood, waiting on her own terms, that patience given freely was a different thing entirely from patience taken. Morgan Heritage Design opened in a 2-room office on the ground floor of a building old enough to have secrets, which was the only kind Celeste would rent. Her name was on the certificate, not the team's, not the firm's, hers, first and only, the way a spring promise should have read and never did. Her name was on the door too, in gold leaf, a sign painter laid by hand because she'd asked for the old way. Raina photographed it and made her stand under it, and Celeste let her, and for once did not look like a woman who'd found a body. "Say the thing," Raina said behind the camera. "What thing?" "The thing you say, about keeping everything." Celeste looked up at her own name in gold. "I keep everything," she said. "It's the job." And this time it wasn't a shield, it was a business model. Evelyn sent her a first client, a chapel with a wall that was 40 centimeters too thick. Celeste laughed out loud reading the email, alone, and the laugh surprised her, and she kept it. She wrote back that she'd take it, and that walls 40 centimeters too thick were, in her experience, the honest ones. They had something to say, and had only ever needed someone willing to read it. She furnished the back room herself. She hung the amber lamp there, a gift, refused twice, accepted the third time in writing, because Do-hyun had learned that she'd take a thing only when it came in the open. It was the mother's lamp, the dragon soft on its collar, wired by a hand that signed with a mark. It belonged in a room where women's work was kept. On the evening she finished, she stood in front of the silvered mirror she'd bought at auction because it reminded her of one, and she opened her bag, and she took out the red lipstick, her mother's shade, the item that was only hers. She put it on slow. She was not trapped in a tower. There was no storm. No wrong number waited to catch a message meant for someone else. The spray she used to carry was in a drawer at home, unpacked, unneeded. She'd stopped bringing it the night she decided to walk toward a locked door, instead of away from it, and she hadn't picked it back up. She lifted her phone, and she looked at herself. Copper silk, red mouth, amber light, the small mole below her left eye, and she took the photograph on purpose. Not to survive anything, not to answer a friend, because she wanted to, and because the choosing was the whole point, and had been from the first door she opened with her own hand. She typed the number from memory, the right one, this time, every digit chosen. She wrote nothing about surviving. She wrote, "The door's mine now. Come up if you want to see the lamp where it belongs." She sent it to Kang Do-hyun. Then she crossed the room, and she did the thing she had done once by choice in the dark, and never stopped meaning. She reached for the door, and she put her hand on it, and she opened it herself, before he could knock, standing on her own side of a threshold no one had built to hide her. The hallway was lit, every floor, including this one. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever poured your whole craft into a project, only to watch someone powerful sign their name over your work? When you found the truth hidden inside a wall no one wanted opened, did you speak it out loud, or measure the cost of being believed? And would you have opened that door by your own choice, knowing the man behind it? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and karma, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.